Thank you guys for being here, and welcome to those that are watching online. Every time we start a council meeting, I look out and I'm so thankful that we have the citizens and the interest that we have from our community. So thank you for those of you that are here. Let's start with prayer. Brian Taylor with Grace Bible Church is here to open us in prayer. And thank you, so let's stand and thank you for being here.
Let's pray. God, I just thank you so much for our leaders in our community. And God, I just pray for wisdom tonight, and I thank you for the fact that you said, where there is no vision, the people perish. And so, God, I just thank you for those that have invested their time to wrestle through some of these matters. And God, just pray for direction for Mayor Kling and the City Council, dear God, that you would just give them understanding and clarity of thought, and to be able to hear the voice of the people, but also at the same time set clear direction for where we need to go. And God, I just praise you for what you're going to do, praise you for what you're doing in our community, and I just pray that we will make a difference for those who need hope in our communities. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Man, let's do the pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Brian. All right, so let's start with roll call.
Rodriguez,
Here.
Bruner,
Here.
Hogaboom,
Here.
Levi. Present. Haverfield,
Here.
Skog.
Here.
Okay, as we know, the agenda is set, and unless it's an emergency, we can't make changes to it. I don't know of anything that needs, well, we can remove, but we can't add. Is there anything that needs to be removed or moved on the agenda? Okay, so seeing nothing, I would stand for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. And second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Hogaboom,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Skog,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Bruner.
Yes.
We do not have any proclamations this evening, so the next item on the agenda is the residents wishing to speak on an agenda or non-agenda item. Darren, thank you for always helping. We so appreciate it. Okay, so the first person that we have on here is Brad Johnson to speak on a non-agenda item. I love that look. Yes, you may.
Okay.
I wish we had a video from this side. I love it.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here representing Peace Officer Standards and Training in the Post Council. My name is Brad Johnson. I'm the Division Administrator for Peace Officer Standards and Training with the Idaho State Police, representing Post and the Post Council. I'd also like to recognize Colonel Wills, Director of the Idaho State Police, who is himself a member of the Post Council. So we're really pleased that he could be here this evening. We're here this evening to present an executive certificate. The executive certificate is presented to chief executives of their agency who have served in that position for at least 3 years, who hold an advanced or management certificate with Post or an equivalent certification from another state, and who have completed while in that position at least 100 hours of additional executive level training, 50 of which have been completed in the last 50 years. And I'm very pleased to be able to announce that Chief Joseph Huff has met those qualifications and is going to be presented with that certificate this evening. So as many of you know, Chief Huff started his law enforcement career at the age of 14 as a police explorer and cadet. He was hired by Nampa Police Department as a reserve officer in 1991 and transferred to police officer position in 1993. In his 25-year career, Chief Huff has held numerous leadership positions in patrol, detectives, and the Special Investigations Unit. He was appointed chief of the Nampa Police Department on January 4th, 2016. Chief Huff is a lifelong resident of Nampa, Idaho, and graduated from Nampa Christian High School. He's been married to his wife Jody for 22 years and has 2 children, Henry and Claire. And Chief, if you would please join me up here so we can make this formal presentation. Again, on behalf of Post and the Post Council, it's my honor and privilege to present you with the executive certificate.
Thank you very much. I
Congratulations,
appreciate
Chief.
You surprised me.
Speech, yeah.
Not a whole lot of speech. I wasn't planning on this. I just submitted for this about 2 weeks ago, so I'm surprised it was so quick. So I appreciate it, and thank you for the colonel for showing up and all the guys here. I know they put in a long day today doing promotional testing, so I was wondering why they were all hanging around. So I couldn't. Again, I have a great group of guys and ladies that I work with. So I just, yeah, thank you, and thank you for my daughter and my wife for being here today too. So that's awesome. So
That's great.
thanks.
I would like to say that when you come in as a mayor, it's a wonderful blessing when you have amazing leaders, and Chief Huff is one of those. And his vision for this city, his strategic planning, the team building, the excellence, and you look at this team of people here that are amazing, that protect our city, and that have a passion for our community. And Chief, I just want to say thank you for your leadership. It is appreciated, and you have an amazing team, and I appreciate the work that you all do. And there may be other comments that council members want to make. I don't want to not give you guys the chance if you'd like to.
I would just affirm the mayor's comments. We're grateful for you and all your crew.
I think we'll all second that, won't we?
Yeah,
No vote needed.
unanimous. Congratulations. Okay, the next person that we have on the agenda to speak is Susan, is it Brony? I may have. Brochi. Susan, go ahead and come forward. As you come forward, we typically have you state your name and your address, and I believe this is a non-agenda item. And so as you state your name and your address, then you can tell us why you're here.
And 2 of us are coming up together because we both on the same day experienced the same thing, so we're kind of team playing.
That's great. And could you grab that microphone? We're going to pull it right back in the middle for you. There you go.
So, good evening.
Good evening.
Mayor Clean, and, sorry.
And council.
A little nervous.
You're good. No, you're good.
Councilwoman. Anyway, I'm Susan Brochi, and
I'm Deborah Aldridge. My address is 128 Meadowbrook Drive, Nampa.
mine's 4418 South Lava Springs Loop in Nampa. So, and we're here to talk a little about what we're kind of calling predatory towing. And there's 2 main issues with this that we have concerns with. We first want to say we're not necessarily debating the towing itself because we were parked in a zone that was marked that you would be towed. We are, but there's 2 issues with that. One is the posting was very misleading. It was posted private parking, only parking for patrons of, and it listed a bunch of numbers of buildings. Well, one of us didn't even see the sign. I did, I'll admit it, but I knew the street, it's the little short street, 3rd, and I thought, oh, they're almost all closed. I'm sure the place I'm going to is one of those numbers. I didn't check. So that's why I'm not debating the towing. It wasn't. But why we think it's a bit predatory is all of them are closed. So it's a little misleading to say only patrons of these closed businesses can park here. And there was a lot of people parking there. So then the second, which is kind of the bigger issue, is that when we came out, the lot was empty, and it had been quite full. It was, I don't know, half full. There were a lot of
There was
cars in
quite a
it.
few cars.
And my car was apparently the last one towed, because I saw it going down the street. So there's some indication that there may be a kickback, and I don't know if it's illegal or not illegal, but it's certainly unethical. And the reason we say that is, I called, and you can fill in any time, and the conversation went like this. I said, my car just got towed. I'd like to know where I can pick it up. You need cash, really. I said, okay, well, tell me where I can pick it up. You've got to have cash. I said, okay, I'll get cash. Can you tell me where can pick it up? He gives me an address, but there's nobody there. And I said, well, how can I pick up my car? It just left the lot if there's nobody there. Well, you've got to call and give him 20 minutes. Okay, you've got to have cash. And I said, all right, tell him I'll be there in 30 minutes. Bring cash. That's how the conversation went. So that was a little odd, to say the least. So we get there, and we went separately. I think you got there first.
Yeah, I got there first, and the same thing happened to me. I called, my daughter actually picked me up. She actually called, and he said, we will accept cash only. And she said, and then he told her 20 minutes. You need to be here to pick your car within 20 minutes if you want to get the car today, because we're only going to be here 20 minutes. So, it's nerve-wracking, because you're looking for $365 cash, mind you, to get there in 20 minutes, and you can only get 300 at the ATM, during the day. So it's a little nerve-wracking, and we were treated very unprofessional.
And so then when we got there, my husband had picked me up, and we had to run around to get cash, because we don't carry around a lot of cash. But we got there. And the owner lives on the property, by the way, so the fact that no one's there was false. And so as my husband's paying the cash, he said, well, how much of this money does the car lot owner get? And the guy that owned the tow company said, that's not for me to say. So kind of confirmed without confirming that there's a little kickback going on. So, the two big concerns we have is, one, the posting is misleading. Why would you say patrons of businesses that are closed? And second, the cash only. I'm sure there's many people who can't come up with $365 in cash like that. Seemed a little odd. We've heard that at times they've charged $200, and I looked up the going rate for tow, and it said anywhere from $25 to $125 for local. And then just the fact that there's an appearance, I can't prove it, of a kickback. So, I don't know, did I miss anything?
No, I think that's.
So we just didn't feel like, and after this happened, we've talked to many people, it's not giving a very good public image, obviously, to downtown Nampa. So,
Well, after the incident, and just talking to family members and acquaintances and stuff, it was brought to my attention also that there was a couple of neighborhood apps that had long conversations about this parking lot, about people being towed from there, about being in the lot. We were probably only there less than an hour. We had stopped for lunch. So it appears that somebody is guarding, watching when somebody pulls into that lot, and that towing company is called immediately. It just doesn't seem like it should be that way. There should be some other solution, whether they need to rope it off, put a sign in that says absolutely no parking at all, because it is very misleading, very misleading.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much for your comments this evening. I've not met either of you until this evening, but I really appreciate you coming. I will say, and this is for council and for your knowledge, and I shared this as I met you right before the meeting, we had a discussion in our directors' meeting about this. We've had a number of complaints come to our office. One of the discussions we had today was the city actually posting a sign, and so Streets is actually they're going to be following up to see what we can do, if we can go ahead and add a sign to the sign there so that there's clarity. But we've had other comments on this, and it's really quite unfortunate. The impact and the negative impact this is having on our downtown is substantial. So I had heard a rumor about I think the comments that you had made tonight and from someone else, and so I just know that we are aware. I really appreciate you coming forward because this is what this is for, is to hear from citizens. So thank you so much, and know that we will follow up on it.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Kling, could I ask a few? Don't go away yet, ladies. If you could. I'm sorry,
We can
Mayor.
ask a quick one.
Yes,
We-
yes. What was the name of the wrecker service?
Atco Towing, and I do have a card if anybody's interested in that.
No, thank you. I just wanted the name of it, so,
Atco, it's
Okay.
on, I believe, Birch Street.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Okay, we have someone else signed up. We have a couple of other people signed up to speak. Jerry Visner. And Jerry, thank you for sharing your, again, your name. You can say it correctly because I probably pronounced it incorrectly, your address, and then
It
I,
was quite close. Better than most. Jerry Visner, and I'm at 624 7th Avenue North.
and you're on an agenda item, is that correct?
Well, I could be out of rotation here because actually I'm listed under 6-4 in new business.
Okay, that's fine. You can go
I
ahead
don't
and,
know if I'm out of rotation and should sit down for a while or not.
no, this is the opportunity for you to
Okay.
speak. I'm just noting what you're here. So item 6.4 on
Well,
the agenda.
what I'm seeking from the council is a deferment for the sidewalks. And it's my understanding, we checked with the city officials here, and there's something called an LID program that's coming to the location or in our vicinity in 2022. And we would like to be part of that program and defer our sidewalks off until that time.
Perfect. And at this point, it is a different agenda item, and we will have a staff report on that. And thank you for sharing that with us, and we will make note of that and have that in consideration as we move forward.
Okay, so you don't need anything else from me? Okay,
No.
thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming. Okay, so we've got two other people signed up that are on agenda item 8.4. And actually, 8.4, let me go look, but that should be a public hearing. And so we will transfer these names over to the public hearing list rather than at this time, and you'll get to speak at the public hearing. Is that good? Is there anyone else that had intended to speak on an agenda or non-agenda item other than a public hearing? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the next item on the agenda. And I've got to get back to that page, which is mayor and council comments. I don't really have any comments tonight. I'm sure there's lots I could share, but I don't have anything. Council, do you have any comments this evening?
Yeah, I'd like to take the privilege of council comments, if I can have 60 to 90 seconds to introduce a young man in the crowd. And I'd like him to introduce himself, but this young man, Cody, will come up and explain why he's here. And hi, Cody.
My name is Cody Doolin, and I've been in 4-H for 7 years, and I'm taking part in the KYG.
Explain that to what KYG is.
KYG is a program where you go and you learn about the judicial branches and all forms of government and how it works.
It stands for Know Your Government.
Yes.
KYG.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. No,
That is awesome.
So he's here tonight, and then we'll get together and have a meeting to try to explain and interpret everything that he's observed tonight as he does this project for Canton County 4-H. But he's a student at Valley View, and he has an interest in this program. It's a great program, so I thought it'd be great to highlight the program itself and Cody being here. So, and we have a little pin. This is a Nampa pin. I'd just like to give to Cody. That's all right. So that's for you, young man. And we'll have a follow-up meeting, and I know some of these guys, if you have questions of the city council, would like to know more about what's happening, the mayor and her office and the city council is accessible to answer questions, so, yes.
You need to turn around, yeah, so they make.
There you go.
Right there, he's taking a picture of you.
Thanks, Cody. All right, thanks, Cody.
Cody, thank you for being here.
What's your address, Cody?
You didn't give that-
Okay, give it to Mom over here.
We must be in Nampa, Idaho. We just.
Okay. You know your address?
Oh, yeah, 11342, Orchard Avenue.
And,
Are you
and,
sure?
and you're also the great-great-grandson of a former Canyon County Commissioner, right? Joyce Chase, for those of you who remember Canyon County Commissioner Joyce Chase, so anyhow, yeah, just a little other fact, you know. But thanks for coming, Cody.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, 30 seconds. And we have events in our municipality that makes Nampa proud, and I'm a little biased here, of course, since I work at NNU, but as of this afternoon, our ladies basketball team, which are skilled basketball players, but they're also wonderful young ladies, are #1 in the nation in Division II poll. So that'll probably be in the paper tomorrow. I hope I have not, they have a game Thursday, hopefully that way. I haven't spooked them. Okay, thanks.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Pretty
you know,
cool.
First time for Division II NCAA that has happened. It has happened to NEI, but not Division II. So.
Wow.
That's awesome. And 4-H is such an amazing program. I'm a lifer, back in growing up, and it's a wonderful program. Good for you. Thank you for being here. Okay, so next on the
Mayor
agenda,
Kling?
I'm sorry?
Mayor Kling.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I just wanted to take just a second to recognize a local business that has received national recognition. I have, again, personal pride in and to the two young men that started the business. Well, youngest son started the business. My older son bought into his business. They just received a national award from Build Magazine, their 2019 Home and Garden Awards for the work that they've done on Mesa Taco here in Nampa. So they'll be receiving national award for that, along with being the best woodworker in the Midwest. So it's pretty neat recognition for a small business that started up in the garage behind my office building. So,
Madam Mayor, if Councilman Haverfield can give those names.
the two boys are Scott and Sean Haverfield.
There you go.
And what is the name of their business?
Iron Timber.
Iron Timber.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, pretty proud of them.
That's cool.
And on that note, Mesa Tacos had a soft opening today, so I didn't get over there. I was actually with the police all day helping with their corporal promotion interview, so that was a long day. But that there is a new business in downtown, and you can check out the work that they did there. It's beautiful, actually, Mesa Tacos.
So they have soft tacos.
We should have soft tacos. We should go find it.
Look forward to seeing it. Wow. Okay, so I think unless there are any other communications that I've missed, it is time for staff communications from Tom Points. And Tom, I'm going to ask you a question, and I apologize. On your staff report, I think, is there a PowerPoint in there that I didn't get to talk to you ahead of time?
Yeah, Mayor, Jeff has a few slides about the transportation funding.
Oh, okay. So in reviewing, I think we've talked about them a little bit previously, and so, yeah, it'll allow you to probably move through them pretty quickly. Yeah, okay, great.
Thanks, Mayor, Council. So we do have a staff report that Jeff and I are going to split up today. Jeff's going to talk about the snow report, and he's done a little white paper on transportation funding. And so, but I'm going to, first I'll cover the MS4 report for the airport. So we do a stormwater report, have a permit with the EPA to discharge stormwater in the Mason Creek. And once a year, we do a report to EPA on that. And we monitor that site for phosphorus, total solids, and E. coli. So we've been monitoring that all year. We haven't had any problems or violations, and we have our report ready to submit. And as soon as the government's not in shutdown anymore, we'll be ready to submit it. So, but Jeff, I'm going to turn the rest over to Jeff. He's done a really great job in summarizing all the transportation funding options that you can consider into the future, and he's got a plan, if you so choose, to to fund transportation. So I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Thank you. And Jeff, I'm going to ask you a question. Are you going to talk at all about Greenhurst? Do you mind if I mention it briefly? Are you?
No, sure, I wasn't planning on, but yeah. if you have
Okay.
questions.
So, and it's just for the public that obviously Greenhurst at 12th Avenue is closed. And you know what? This is going to be my public, for anyone listening, request, and that is, as citizens of this community, we need to obey signs. My goodness, I have watched so many people go through a road closed, open to through traffic only, that absolutely ignore the signs. And it is a safety issue when people ignore that. So it's, anyway, and I want to say a thank you to Jeff, you and your work, in your communication, in managing that project. For anyone that is frustrated by it, please know that we have a team of people that are working diligently to manage the project, to put it through in a timely fashion, and to communicate to the public. And you've done a really good job. Appreciate your work. And then for those of us that are here that know people that drive that route, please encourage them to take the detours as the detours are posted. I'm just amazed at those that go through. In fact, my husband and I went through the other night and somebody had laid the signs down. And that is really a public safety issue. We got out and we stood them back up, and then I made sure it was okay that we did that with Jeff. But you know what, we need to protect each other, and we need to respect the laws. So, but thank you for your work.
Yeah, Clemente Salinas took care of that evening. I know that engineering does a great job of working with the public and on tough projects like that, so.
Thank you.
Quick snow report, we've had a pretty mild season. We did have a minor event on the 15th of January, which we got to test out some of our equipment and things, and everything went very well. We've got up to 25,000 gallons of either mag or brine, which is a salt mixture we put on the roads. So it's going easy. Be prepared for the worst, and that's kind of how we will continue. Yeah, believe for the best, right? With that, I'd like to just, if this is going to be quick, 5 minutes, present the funding plan. These are options for the council. We know that there are difficult decisions and large numbers, and we wanted to present something that is doable and provided you with options. So Nampa's transportation system. Nampa owns a $1.4 billion transportation system. We have 800 lane miles of roadway. We have 39 major bridges. That's a picture of the 16th Avenue Bridge. We resurfaced that a couple of years ago. Of 228 minor bridges. That is the Greenhurst box culvert we put in last year. And if you can kind of, as you're watching this, think of the cost associated with each one of these elements. We have 67 signalized intersections. This is the intersection of Karcher and Middleton. This was the highest accident location in the state at one point, and this improvement was much needed. Partnership between ITD and the city. 38 pedestrian signals. A picture of a Hawk signal on 12th Avenue there that was recently put in, and then on the left is rapid flashing beacons, and we typically put these around schools and pathways, areas that we need security for pedestrians and kids. 5,000 streetlights, not sure if you know that. This is an example of some of the decorative streetlights we have downtown. 26 miles of pathway in the Parks Department, and Darren does a great job. They maintain a lot of pathway, so I put that in there to plug for them. 20,000 pedestrian ramps, and then 6,500 stormwater structures, which is included in our funding. So our street funding funds this also currently right now. So for instance, the seepage bed on the upper left was put in as part of the Canyon Street project a few years back. And just look at the cost of just that element. A catch basin in the lower left-hand corner, there's thousands of those around town. If you dig up one downtown, they kind of just disintegrate. I have not found a good older catch basin that made it through a project, although we always try to keep them. And then the flood in 2013 produced these type of issues, and we've been working diligently. I know stormwater and the engineering and stormwater have been working to repair these and doing a great job over the last several years. 27 street staff maintain that $1.4 billion. That's Don Barr and the crew down there, and this was when the mayor came out for Christmas and said hello. So our citizen survey said the highest needs were streets and public safety. And we want to pursue that and improve our transportation system here. So when they did the recent Transportation Master Plan draft, the final draft came out, there was a $17 million funding gap in transportation. So our current funding comes from property taxes, and then property taxes that come back through the Nampa Highway District, trash fees, gas tax through the state, impact fees, which we'll talk about later tonight, and then grant funding. And grant funding we pursue aggressively because we need it, and it's available. To bridge this funding gap, we thought about, okay, these are difficult decisions for everyone involved, including decision makers. We wanted it to be attainable, can be accomplished in 10 to 15 years, equitable, multiple funding options, sharing responsibility among all the players who use it, and then incremental. Funding increases would be steady and affordable. The two plans for the goal, the first is to improve safety, system reliability, and economic vitality. And this is we want to complete our capital improvement plan in the next 10 years is the first goal. So that map on the right shows a number of different projects around the city that the impact fees used to judge how many projects we have and what's the cost over the next 10 years. And the second goal is to improve the overall roadway condition by funding the pavement management plan. And if we don't put any more funding into intersections, they will be at a level of service F by 2035, which is gridlock, the major intersections. And if we don't fund any more, we put any more money towards pavement condition, the average pavement condition in the city by 2030 will be less than 44 on the pavement condition index, which is a failed condition. So we want to improve pavement condition. This is an aerial shot of Middleton Road after we got done crack sealing it. So you can see what a failed roadway looks like there. There's 3 parts to this funding plan, and we phase them out as options. There's no decisions on this plan. This is just information at this point, recommendation. The first is development impact fees, which we're to discuss later this evening, is the first part to the plan. Second is a 1% incremental adjustment tax increase. And as you know, the city can take a cost of living type 3% max. We are presenting a request for 1% of that 3%. We understand there's other needs in the city. And that's about $350,000 per year, increased revenue, and then $10.50 per household. Second phase of the plan will be through 2021 to 2024. We're beginning these discussions outside because outside of the city, this is a regional kind of discussion, but vehicle registration fees. $25 vehicle registration fee would yield $2.5 million annually, and this is for people who use the roadways. That would require a countywide vote and negotiations and an agreement with the highway districts. And then we have a GO bond, a general obligation bond that's ending in 2024. That's $2.5 million a year that we are paying towards that. At that time, that'll free up $2.5 million, and we're asking or proposing 500,000 of that $2.5 million go towards transportation. And then phase 3, I did put this on as other options, but stormwater, all the 6,500 structures and all that cost of $200 million worth of infrastructure, we just want to look at other options in the coming years. One of them was to revisit a stormwater funding option. In 2012, we took a run at a stormwater utility, but something like that to help bridge that funding gap. This is a summary, and it shows incrementally how the different funding options can rise in 15 years to around that $17 million funding gap, and that's with aggressively pursuing the grants that we're paying 7% of the match amount. And with that, I'll take any questions you might have.
Mayor Kling, will there be more information provided in our public meeting that we'll be having later this evening? Or is now the time to ask you questions specific to what your plan is?
I believe in
far as-
impact fee discussions that we can be able to answer questions there.
Then I'll just wait till then.
Okay.
Mayor, council, I had a question. Of all the funding options that you presented, are you in contact with the state legislature at all about looking at, there's going to be an increase in electric vehicles on the road that they're not buying gas, they're using our roads and not contributing to the gas tax. What sort of alignment, maybe this is an administrative question I can take off the meeting, but I'm just wondering if that's been explored at least? A way to capture sort of a user fee via the gas tax, because we're basically subsidizing the e-vehicles, and as more and more people buy their Teslas. I have a friend who just bought one not too long ago. So, and I know their goal, and Ford and Volkswagen's, to make an affordable vehicle, electric vehicle. And as we see more of those on the road, we're going to have more consumers, but not paying.
Which is impacting the tax.
Yeah.
The gas tax income and revenue. I think it's something that we need to discuss as we move forward from phase 1. Phase 2 is more regional discussions, which would include that.
Has there ever been an impact fee for people moving in from California, paying a higher plate fee for the transfer? Not just California, I mean anybody from out of state moving into the state, an impact fee that the state can assess for people moving into the state?
The question's been asked.
Okay.
I think these are state
Okay,
issues
okay.
versus city, but
All right.
that,
I can get back to you.
ACLU would be all.
Oh, shoot, okay, well,
yeah.
thanks, Jeff, appreciate it. I'm just thinking outside the box, I'm thinking, okay.
Jeff, I appreciate this. It's really good information, and thank you for continuing to have it before us. One thing that I will say to those here is that, and it's something that I don't know that the average citizen knows, and that is that Nampa is the largest full-service city in the state of Idaho. We think of ourselves as third largest now in population, but Boise and Meridian do not do streets, and it doesn't come out of their budget. They also don't do stormwater. And if you look at what the city of Nampa is doing to invest in our streets and our stormwater infrastructure, it's massive. Meridian doesn't have, I mean, so if you look at what our general fund funds, they also don't have the oversight of any facilities as we do. Meridian doesn't have an airport, they don't have a civic center, they don't have an entertainment, just, you know, the Fort Idaho Center as we do. And Boise doesn't own their water system, Suez does. And so when you look at the work that is put out by this city and under the leadership of our Public Works Department, it's massive, as we are the largest full-service city in the state of Idaho. There's a lot of work that goes on here, and there's a lot of responsibility, so I know that you're managing a lot. And so we are talking about better funding, and we've got some other plans that don't rely on the state legislature other than the reallocation of the highway district fees, and that will be coming. So,
Mayor Kling. Jeff, quick question for you. You talked about a vehicle registration increase. Is that a local option tax that will be an annual thing for anyone having a registration on a vehicle? Is that how that's?
In Canyon County. So it will be voted on. It would have to be presented through the highway districts or through the commissioners, and then voted upon. And then once it's established, as far as I know, there's not a sunset on that.
So it's an annual
It's an
fee?
annual fee. So
And does this require a 2/3 majority?
50 plus one.
Just 50 plus one?
and Canyon County, excuse me, Ada County currently has this. They did not approve the increase, but they currently have a registration fee that is funding streets in Ada County via the Ada County Highway District.
So how is that collected if someone pays for like a 3-year license? And I mean, is it just multiplied times 3 then?
I would assume that would be the case.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, if we have plenty of data. Tom started this process a year and a half ago, so if you have questions, we can give you more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Great job. Okay, moving on to unfinished business. Our first item, item 4.1 on the agenda, is an action item, and we will be looking for approval under suspension of rules. This is the first reading of ordinance for vacation of right-of-way located within the Nampa Industrial Corporation First Edition subdivision, comprising of .683 acres located running north off of Industrial Road between Lot 1 on the west and Lot 6, 7, 8, and Block 4 on the east, and the Phyllis Canal, and parcel number R311881000 to the north for NLH LLC John Barrow and Homestyle Industries to retain ownership of the adjacent vacated right-of-way.
An ordinance of the City of Nampa, Canyon County, Idaho, vacating that certain alley right-of-way located within the Nampa Industrial Corporation First Edition subdivision running north of off Industrial Road, directing the city engineer to alter the use and area map accordingly, providing for an effective date, providing for severability, and repealing all ordinances, resolutions, orders, and parts thereof in conflict herewith.
So I would look for a motion.
Madam Mayor,
To approve under suspension of rules.
fellow council members, I move that we approve the ordinance for vacation of the right-of-way as read,
I'll second that.
under suspension of rules.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll second that, Mayor.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Brunner,
Yes.
Vogabone,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Skog.
Yes.
Item 4.2 on the agenda is another action item, and this is the first reading of ordinance for modification of an annexation and zoning related to the development agreement, which is ordinance 3335, instrument number 200423257, between Lava Springs LLC and the City of Nampa by amending the recital section and certain commitments and conditions thereof, also annulling and rescinding Exhibits B and C, then substituting a new master plan in the stead of Exhibit B. This is pertaining to parcel number R29454 at 3905 Southside Boulevard, which is a 6.85 acre property in a RS6 PUD zoning district at the southwest corner of the intersection of East Locust Lane and Southside Boulevard. This is for Matt Schultz, representing Quattro Properties, Nampa, Inc.
And an ordinance enacted by the Nampa City Council modifying annexation and zoning development agreement to which that certain real property commonly known as the Lava Springs Plan Unit Development in Nampa, Canyon County, Idaho, comprising approximately 110.50 acres more or less, is subject described in ordinance number 3335 and recorded on April 30th, 2004 as instrument number 200423257, records of Canyon County, Idaho, to allow single-family residential development in place of the commercial building lot previously planned for a specified portion of said property, directing the city planning director to alter the use and area map accordingly, providing an effective date, providing for severability, and repealing all ordinances, resolutions, orders, and parts thereof in conflict herewith.
So I'd entertain a motion to approve the ordinance under suspension of rules.
So move as under suspension of rules.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Vogabone,
Yes.
Levi. Yes. Skog,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Brunner.
Yes.
Section 5 of the agenda comprises of pending ordinances. And we'll move on to number 6, or section 6, which is new business. 6.1 on the agenda is an action item, and this is a request to authorize the mayor to sign the contract for trauma intervention program. Jason Kimball, thank you for being here.
Mayor, council, thanks for having me. So I was asked to come to speak about the trauma intervention program. We were approached late summer from the representative, who's a part-time employee, the only part-time employee in the state of Idaho for trauma intervention program, to be part of that. She talked to us probably about 2 years ago for the same conversation we had with her this time. This time she brought reinforcements. She brought the chief of police of Meridian, the chief of police from Eagle, and Kurt Crum from Boise Police Department to convince us to show us the advantages of being part of the program. So quick, and I think I gave you some information about that in your packets, about what it is, what TIP is. I'll explain it briefly what it entails. It is simply a program where it's set up by all volunteer basis except the one part-time person who coordinates everything. And they're highly trained people who are volunteers from our own community that would come and assist first responders, specifically in our situation, police, and other jurisdictions, they help respond, police, fire, the coroner's office, and sometimes EMS. They would come and help us with situations dealing with victims who have seen trauma, typically in situations where our own victim witness coordinators don't respond to. An example of that would be a fatality crash where we're dealing with victims inside that vehicle, or more likely than not, that would happen most frequently would be unattended deaths, where our victim witness don't respond to that. We would be able to call on them to respond to help us assist with victims in coordination of other events that go along with that. Some examples that were given by other jurisdictions was Eagle had a school bus crash that involved about 60 students, and TIP showed up in force and was able to help choreograph all of parents responding, help them with resources to include ongoing counseling and all that entails. Some other examples would be in courtroom testimony when we we are called upon, and we also call the victims of those situations where a lot of times the victims aren't the only ones involved, it's other family members. TIP responds to the courthouse to help with that process as well. So it's another advantage for us to help our community and be part of the community in a community partnership. It's a volunteer basis along the memberships involved. The only cost associated with it is about, I think, a 10-cent or 11-cent per resident of Nampa, so approximately $12,000 a year that we would be our responsibility, and that helps them cover their insurance, any materials they use for, they hand out materials to victims, they help choreograph and keep the lights on as far as phones for their volunteers. So that's what TIP is about.
So, Madam Mayor, question if I may. So this is, so they're on, someone's on call, volunteer or group of volunteers on call, where you as a police officer, whoever is first on site, can call them and they come out immediately to the site, or is this a follow-up the day after, or what's the process, I guess is what I'm asking.
Mayor, Councilman, it's a great question. So the way that process works is they're on call. Their protocol is when they first become a volunteer, they have to do 40 hours of pretty intense training. After that, they have to do 40 hours of volunteer time every single month. 36 of that hours is on-call time, 4 hours is training. They have once it's set up and going, they have a 20-minute response time. So we would call them, and I will use the example, because this is probably something we would most frequently use them for, is an unattended death. If we respond to a scene, officer gets there, determines there's no foul play. What typically happens now is we call the coroner and officers are on scene for an hour to 3 hours, waiting for all those arrangements to happen between the funeral home, the coroner's office, and assisting that process. In that situation, we would call them. Once we determined there was no foul play, 20 minutes later, they would respond, and our officers essentially could hand that process off to them, and we could be back on the streets handling other calls.
Okay, thanks.
Mayor Kling?
Yes.
Sandy, did you want to say something?
Go ahead.
Just a quick question for you. Background checks, I think that's probably a given. Since this is so sensitive of an issue that we'd be putting someone like TIP involved with people's lives, what is the background of the individual criteria for them to be able to get the 40 hours of training that you're talking about?
So Mayor, Councilman, that's another good question. Part of that process is they outsource a private security check, and that process is actually paid for by the volunteers. They have to pay for that on their own, and it's typically a fingerprint, a CJIS compliance, meaning that they're able to be in the vehicle with a patrol vehicle with officers so they can see that access. So there's no criminal record, there's no felonies on their records, and only minor misdemeanors.
Drug analysis as well?
I don't think they do a drug analysis on them. I could be mistaken on that, but I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Mayor, thank you. Officer Kimball, 2 questions. Is this an overlap in any of the services that we have already provided through, for instance, like the Family Justice Center, they do counseling, et cetera?
Mayor, that question, Councilman, is we have victim witness coordinators through the Family Justice Center. They would not be coming out on the same type of calls. The Family Justice Center victim witness coordinators only comes out on domestic violence or homicides and stuff like that. TIP would not be coming out to those calls. These would be coming out to calls where it's a lower level of trauma, and they are also could help in other resources. When we do have major events, they can be part of that process. And it does not overlap with anything the Family Justice Center is doing. As far as counseling, they don't provide the counseling. They would actually be working with the Family Justice Center and giving them as a resource and a direction to go to Family Justice Center for long-term counseling.
Thank you. And my second question is the funding, the 11,000 plus. What is the source of that?
So that's what we're asking for now, is right now, they're asking us to come in midterm in our fiscal year. And part of the conversations I've had with them is we're not going to come and ask for money because we don't have it in our budget. So they're agreeing to waive that first half of the year. And we're looking for is, because it's what we signed a contract for is funding for fiscal year 2020. So a 2020 fiscal year would be coming asking for that to be added to the budget. More than likely, because we're all, as Mayor has pointed out, a self-service city, under public safety, it would probably be the police department that would put it in our budget.
So may I follow up on that, please? Thank you. So the 11,000 would be a total for a year, or from where we would be now to the end of the fiscal year?
That would be beginning October of 19. And so the first, or the remaining of this time, we would get for no charge. That was the agreement we had with them.
Thank you.
So the question at this time really is the authorization to move forward and sign the agreement. There is a commitment, an annual budgetary commitment of 11,000. I don't remember the exact dollar amount.
$804.
800
Approximately $12,000.
$12,000. The agreement, we can cancel the agreement at any time, because we had this discussion that we can't at this time commit to a 2020 budgetary item at this time. But I've been told and am under the understanding that in that the council cannot commit now for 2020, that if for some reason it did not go through, we would end the relationship and we would not proceed. They're willing to go ahead and begin serving us at this time, recognizing that could happen. Is that correct?
Mayor, that is correct.
So it would be the authorization to move forward, sign the agreement with them, and it gives us 6 months to try it and see its effectiveness and prior to the budget.
Mayor, council, this contract would be reviewed by legal counsel. You reviewed it. And it's clear as stated that there'd be no obligation in the following fiscal year should we decide to terminate the relationship in the meantime. So it's almost sort of like a trial run. Would you keep records on their calls so that we would be able to have data? Would one of their representatives, or would you be speaking on their behalf?
Mayor and Councilman, I'm not sure I understand your question, but as far as tracking that, the way that process would work, it would be our dispatchers, officers would respond, request a tip be notified for them to respond. Our dispatch would notify them. As soon as that would happen, that would trigger statistics that we would be able to maintain.
Yeah, so I think what I would be looking for is to be able to tell our taxpayers what benefit they've received. So if they weren't called but maybe 2 or 3 times, then I would want to weigh whether or not it's worth funding for the following fiscal year or not. So as long as that data can be provided so we can make an informed decision the following budget year.
I know they track that and we could track that as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Are there any additional questions?
Madam
Okay.
Mayor.
Yes.
Fellow council members, in the contract, there's a hold harmless paragraph, so we're held harmless for any bad actions on their part. And also, there's a $1 million liability policy that they have to have for insurance. So with that, I would move that we authorize the mayor to sign the contract for trauma intervention program as presented.
Second.
Any additional discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Hogaboom?
Yes.
Skog?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Appreciate it. Item 6.2 on the agenda. This is an action item. Darren Johnson will speak to it. Go ahead and come forward as I read it. It's the Nampa Parks and Recreation request City Council action to authorize the mayor to sign a field use lease agreement between the City of Nampa and the Nampa Legion Baseball for the use of Rodeo Park.
So
Madam
moved.
Mayor, okay, second.
Sorry, Darren. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Is
Got
there,
your steps, help me with
Okay.
your steps today, yeah.
is there any further discussion?
Mayor?
Yes.
I would just like to thank Darren and all of those who've been so faithful to work on this contract, because I was contacted about a year and a half ago from the Nampa School District, the baseball coach, and also from those with the American Legion, and I know this much about baseball. Got an education, but there was a lot of frustration, and they have done an excellent job on just nailing everything that was of a concern, so thank you very much.
That's awesome. Thank you. Okay, so I've just lost track. I believe we were in the discussion phase. Did we do roll call?
Not yet.
Okay, so unless there's further discussion, roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Hogaboom?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Skog?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Item 6.3 on the agenda is also an action item. This is to authorize the mayor to sign a purchase agreement for 129 Second Avenue North, and the document has been reviewed by legal.
Madam Mayor, so moved.
And second.
Thank you, Beth. Is there any discussion? Questions? Thank you. Roll call.
Hogaboom?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Skog?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Item 6.4 on the agenda is an action item, and it's to authorize Public Works Director to sign a deferral agreement for curb, gutter, and sidewalks for 624 7th Avenue North. This is the gentleman that came forward asking if he could defer until the LID is in his area, and I believe that was in
22.
22, was that in 2022? And yeah, go ahead.
So moved for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're done. Action item 6.5, this is an action item, this is the first reading of ordinance for the street naming, is that correct, Debbie? For Exhibit B for South Walnut Ridge Way. Okay,
An ordinance of the City of Nampa, Canyon County, Idaho, changing the name of East Oklahoma Avenue to South Walnut Ridge Way.
So moved.
Second.
okay, and this would be under suspension of rules.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Skog?
Yes.
Hogaboom?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Okay, number 6.6 on the agenda is council award bid and authorize the mayor to sign the contract for the pump maintenance project to Lane of Idaho.
Madam Mayor, so moved.
And I'll second that, Mayor.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Hogaboom?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Skog?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
And item 6.7 on the agenda, this is to award a bid and authorize the mayor to sign the contract for irrigation water quality FY project with Cascade Enterprises. We'd like Tom to speak to that. Thank you, Tom.
Mayor, council, I'll put up a map here on the locations. So, back in 2015, we heard from our irrigation customers, they'd like to have cleaner water. And so, ever since then, we've been putting in filters at a couple locations in the city per year. So these are the locations we're talking about this year, which is Creekside and Midland Park. So this has been an effective program for us to, these filters. In your packet there, you can see the number of complaints have gone down since we implemented this program. Every year, they're getting less and less on the complaints, and the water quality's getting better. So this is we put out a contract to put in some more filters, and we had 5 bids, and Cascade Enterprises was a low bid at $253,000. So this is authorize council and mayor to sign the contract for the irrigation water improvement project.
So, Madam Mayor, question. Tom, have we used Cascade Enterprise for this type of service in the past? Do we have it?
They've done work for us before, but not on the water quality.
That they've done Daniel quality work, in your opinion? Okay.
Yeah, they always check out.
Okay. Thanks.
Mayor Kling?
Yes.
Quick question. Is the service area between the project location on Creekside and the project location on Midland Park, is that the area that's benefiting from these filters?
Well, the system is irrigation system is a regional system, so it's not necessarily just in between those 2 stations. It could be a wider area because all the looping.
So it'd be north of Lake Lowell as well as south of Lake Lowell.
That's correct, Council.
And then as far as east and west, how far? Quarter mile?
About a quarter mile there?
At least that half mile or so, up there, yeah.
All right, thank you.
I know our citizens are appreciating the filters and the cleaner water coming through, which is great. Okay, what
Madam
is,
Mayor, I'll make the motion that you sign the contract for the irrigation water quality F-19 project with Cascade Enterprises.
I'll second that.
is there any further discussion? Roll call?
Hogaboom?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Skog?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Is this your pen? Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Okay, it is 7 o'clock, and so I think we'll pause. Tom, thank you. This evening, we have, I believe it's 1, 2, 3, 4 different public hearings. At some point, depending on the length of the evening, we may need to take a pause and a break. But at this point, we'll just step into the public hearing process. Okay. Our first public hearing this evening is to create the Local Improvement District, which the acronym is an LID, 166, for the purpose of constructing improvements to the city's sidewalks, pedestrian ramps, drive approaches, curbs, gutters, and other related street improvements. So we'll begin, in that there's not an applicant in this case, we'll begin with our staff report. And so who's doing our staff report? Daniel, thank you.
Mayor and Council, here tonight for the public hearing to create Local Improvement District 166 for our sidewalk improvements in Zone E. As you may be familiar with, this is an annual program that we do to help finance the improvements to our sidewalks. The city code requires property owners to maintain, keep in good repair, and if needed, replace their sidewalks adjacent to their properties. And so the process we go through in the LIDs, last June, we sent out a letter to all property owners within Zone E, approximately almost 5,000 property owners there, requesting that if there were any people that wanted to participate, had bad sidewalk, or wanted to do some improvements to their sidewalk, to invite them to volunteer. Per the council's direction of 3 years ago, we then took the number of property owners that we had volunteers for, which in this case, we have 43 volunteers, and looked at all the rest of the sidewalks in the area and graded them based on different categories, cracks, heaves, different ADA compliance issues, and established the list of those that were the worst based on the metrics we have, and then identified the additional 57 properties to be up to the desired 100 properties that council had directed previously. And so what's before you today is the creation of the LID. We have, instead of 100 properties this year, we have 101. We received a complaint on a property that's outside of zone, right up here, not long before we went to public hearing notices for this, so we included that property to be done in this LID as well. The LID program allows property owners to reap the benefits of the city. Having one large project, we keep the costs low versus individual owners having to hire a contractor to do that, and we're able to finance that over a 10-year period for those property owners at a relatively low interest rate, whatever the bonds sell for at that time. Historically, we used to do only volunteer LIDs. That changed 3 years ago based on council direction for a desire to improve the quality of the sidewalks for the pedestrians here in Nampa. And so for our process for this particular LID, the initial mailers went out in June. Required property owners were notified first in September of last year, and then again with another notice that included the dollar value for their proposed replacements on their property, and then all 101 property owners received a notice the start of this year in the first week in January for the actual public hearing. I'd stand for any questions.
Thank you for walking us through the process. That's perfect and excellent. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Mayor Kling, one question. Daniel, do you know of the homes that were identified, how many are owner occupied versus rental?
I do not have that statistic. We could pull that, but I would not be able to supply it
Okay, thanks.
Madam Mayor, a question also. So remind me, I probably should know this, but is it the same for every property owner, or depending on the amount of square footage of sidewalk, or how does that work? So because what I'm looking at here, if my math is correct, they're gonna be paying over 10, if it was equal, $300 per year for 10 years.
So each property is assessed differently based on what improvements are required.
Okay.
The low end of them, I want to say the smallest estimate is around $500. The largest estimate is around $6,000
Okay,
for their assessment.
thanks.
And that's just based on how many lineal foot or square feet of
And
sidewalk.
Madam Mayor, if I just follow up, so every property owner of the 50, whatever was left, 57, they've all been informed of what their estimated dollar amount would be over the 10-year period?
Yes,
at
that
this
went
point?
out with their letter in October.
Thanks.
I have another question, and that is, if a property owner wanted to take advantage of the funding opportunity but do the work with their own contractor, are they allowed to do that?
Madam Mayor, no, they would not be allowed to do that. The LID requires public bidding, and so that would not be something that they would have an opportunity. If they wanted to have their own private contractor do that, we would certainly allow them to do that, but we would not be able to finance it through the LID.
Right, thank you.
Mayor Kling, so you raise a point, are those Davis-Bacon wage rates or just standard wage rates?
Mayor Kling, Councilman Haverfield, no, that is standard. There is no federal funding here, and so no Davis-Bacon.
Okay, so it can be competitive.
Yes.
Are there any other questions for Daniel at this time? Okay, thank you. And seeing none, this is a public hearing, and at this time, it's the opportunity for the public to speak on behalf or to oppose this particular issue. We have one person signed up this evening in support of the issue, and that is Glenn Moldenhauer. Glenn, are you here? Oh, there you are. Thank you. I'm looking right past you. I apologize. Would you like to come, go ahead and come forward, and if you don't mind.
They had a bunch of forms there, and I signed that one, and I didn't realize that was what was going to happen.
Which one would you like to be on? Which public hearing agenda item did you want to testify on?
It was basically the one with the panel that was supposed to be here this evening about the taxes on
The impact fee?
Impact fees, yeah.
Okay, we'll put you on impact fees. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so hearing that, is there anyone else that did not get signed up that wants to testify in support of the LIDs? Okay, seeing none, I have 2 people signed up in opposition, plus we have 1 letter that we want to make of record. And so the first name I have down is Brandy Wilson. Brandy, are you here? Would you like to come up? Okay, and Brandy, as you come, go ahead and restate your name and your address, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, so Brandy Wilson, W-I-L-S-O-N, you wanted my home address? 211 South Canyon Street, Nampa, Idaho, 83686. Okay, so I oppose to this. I've lived in my home for 13 years. And we talk about the city budgets. Well, I don't think there was a lot considered here, open-minded. People have special needs. They also, elderly has fixed incomes. Wages here. My husband and I have had steady employment. He has for 19 years. He's home 65 days a year. So he doesn't get to choose his wages. We can't afford these kinds of increases along with our tax assessments, homeowners insurances. I'm looking at the whole picture here. We're not looking at one number. And I don't want to be paying for these sidewalks for the next 10 years. That's groceries. I'm looking at a 10-year span. And as far as I understood in our letters, talking to the engineer, we were allowed to volunteer and find our other contractors, which our other councilman had mentioned about having competitive prices. But in my opinion, this is forcing a homeowner, as you mentioned, it could be renters or homeowners. It's forcing us against our will. Nobody asked, what are your wages? Are you a wounded warrior? Have you served in the military? Do you have special needs kids? Are you elderly on a fixed income? there's a lot of factors here that were not taken in consideration that were fair, in my opinion, for the people. Our homes are about 70 years old. 13 years, I've seen nobody come in here saying we need a new sidewalk. So the city wants to fund it on the taxes I'm already paying, I'm glad to do that, but it's just not feasible. It's not affordable, not for many, many of us. So I appreciate the improvements, but personally, I'd rather have our plumbing be done. So that's all I'd like to say. What's your thoughts?
Thank you. I don't think you'll probably get response right now, but we appreciate you coming. Thank you. That's what this is for, so thank you so much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Flag, absolutely, for that one.
Thank you. The other person that we have signed up is Brooke Fisher. And Brooke, thank you for stating your address. You'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, so I'm Brooke Fisher, and that's Fisher with a C. My address is 307 South State Street. And I'd have to say, I'm generally about the issue, I'm somewhat neutral as far as whether it goes through, but as far as being part of the district, we would like to be able to try to opt out of it. And part of that has to do with, we know we have heaval, we have issues with the sidewalk, but we have talked to, if we're looking at fair pricing, we went ahead and had a civil engineer look at it, because when we got our quote that we got was about $2,700. But what we have in our yard is 2 very large trees that are causing this heaval. And that doesn't include felling those trees that will just continue to cause upheaval on the sidewalk. So we did have one of those trees taken down. It's a $1,200 process just for one. So as homeowners, we're doing that in steps. We're hoping to do the next one next year. And we had some quotes for the work to be done. And the quotes were 1/2 to 2/3 what the quote was given for the city. So we want the option to opt out of that district and be able to pay a much better price for the same work. We realize it's an issue. We have kids, we have small kids that ride their bikes and they hit the little thing and they think it's kind of fun, but we realize it's not a great thing for those who don't want to hit that bump. But if we're given more time, we can hopefully get that work done for a lot less money and less burden on us as a homeowner. And I have a feeling that might be true of other homeowners. I don't know how fair the price seems to be, but when we talked to 3 different people, we were given that, what? That's a really high price. No, $1,500 sounds a lot more reasonable. Here's what, So we do have a letter too that we'd like to just submit that just says as much as what we've just said. And any questions, I'm happy to answer if there's anything.
Are there any questions?
Mayor Kling, quick question. Do you know, did the price include curb replacement or just sidewalk?
I don't know that, and I don't have it printed up for me. I know that they were just looking at the heaval of the sidewalk.
The sidewalks.
But where our house is, it probably does include the curb too, because the curb is also heaved up, so it's.
It's deteriorating.
Yeah,
then.
it's an issue because of tree roots that are real obvious.
Yeah, they just take a little bit more specialized form to be able to cast that concrete, and it needs to meet, obviously, the city standards as far as for installation. So
Sure.
that's probably where the cost might vary a little bit. So.
Mayor, council, Dr. Fisher, your husband, the other Dr. Fisher, shouted something. Not to say you're being disrespectful, but I think you're providing an answer.
It was just sidewalk then.
Just the sidewalk, okay. Thanks for that clarification.
Any further questions? Thank you. Appreciate it. Go ahead and bring it forward and we'll see that it's of record with everything else. Thank you. Thank you. We also have another, well, before I move on, I want to ask the question, is there anyone else that was here that did not sign up but would like to speak to this particular issue? Okay, so seeing none, we do have a letter, and I'd like to read this letter because I think it's important since this is a public hearing, and this is a letter from a citizen that was presented to the city with today's date. And it's from Cor Vera Salvador. And I don't know if it's typical that we read these, but I think since it's a public hearing, I'd like to. May I do so? Does that work? Okay. So, to whom it may concern, I've received your letter inviting us to attend the meeting that will take place at Council Chambers at City Hall in Nampa on Tuesday, the 22nd at 7 p.m., where the repairs of the sidewalks and other modifications will be discussed. Also in that letter, you are notifying me the cost that I have to pay. I regret to tell you that I do not agree with the charge that the city wants me to pay for the work of the sidewalk. I know that information was given to me by people who they work for the state, and information was given to me many years ago and now again recently. In this middle paragraph, I think there's a little bit of misunderstanding regarding the state, but I'll read it anyway so that I'm complete in what I'm reading. I'm also being notified that the letter of payment for the repair of the sidewalk is that in front of the property located at 415 West Washington. For that information that I was able to obtain from employees working in the state offices and by police officers in technical school where I was studying, for general contractor, the streets, sidewalks, alleys, schools, parks, etc. belong to the state. In actuality, it's the city. In addition, all citizens pay taxes for the maintenance of streets, sidewalks, schools, and parks. I've lived in this country for almost 60 years, and I bought some properties and repaired them, and I've always known that the sidewalks and the streets belong to the city, and you cannot touch them without written permit from the city. I do not agree with the charges that are being made to the owners of properties when that property belongs to the city and the state of Idaho, and yet the state has to repair them, not the citizens. So this is the letter as presented, and I believe you have that in your packet. So I just wanted that to be of record. So at this time, does anyone have any further questions for Daniel?
Madam Mayor, I do. Since the Dr. Fishers have brought up as far as the tree root challenge, and we all know from PAFs and so on that if you don't take care of the tree, then it's just an ongoing issue. So help me with how that is handled normally. Do we put new sidewalks and curbing in where there's still a tree root issue?
Mayor, Councilman Bruner, it really depends on where the tree is located, how severe that is, if the property owners want to maintain the trees. There is, in the older areas of town, often there's the landscape strip between the sidewalk and the curb. I'm not sure if that's the case in her particular area or not. Many times in those areas, the trees are very mature, healthy trees that the property owners want to maintain. And so we work with them to relocate the sidewalk around the tree or build up over the top of the roots to come up and over the top of them so that the trees don't have to be removed. If the trees, if the desire by the property owner is to have the trees removed, we can do that under the LID program, and that can be go into the assessment. As part of that, we often do tree removal. That's one of our bid items.
So, Madam Mayor, if I may, Daniel, so is there a recommendation made by whether it's best practice to remove the tree or to custom the sidewalk and curbing around it or over it?
Mayor, Councilman Brunner, it really comes down to the preference of the property owner.
So the property owner makes that decision.
If they want to maintain the trees, we'll figure out a way to do it if at all possible. If they don't, we'll work with Earl, the city forester, and we'll have the tree removed as part of the bid.
Thank you.
One thing that she did talk to is the ability to have their own contractor do that work. We have on the 2 previous LEDs that we'll be bringing forward in the next couple of months to close out and do the assessment roll-on. We have had property owners that during that process, they were included in the ordinance creating the LID. Through that process, they chose to have a contractor do the work themselves rather than have the work done by the city's contractor. And they will just not be in the assessment role at that point. So if that's their desire to have that done, we would give them the time frame of the LID construction to have that done. And if it wasn't, then we would have that done in the LID, but we would be supportive of allowing them that option, and we could work with them to do that.
So, Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, that brought now another question to mind. So if someone does opt out to use their own contractor and does it in the standard amount of time allowed, then are there alternative properties where you add 3 or 4 if folks do? What's that process, or do you have a process at this point?
Mayor, Councilman Bruner, in the old way of doing our LIDs, where it was 100% volunteer, we used to have oftentimes, they'd be doing one property and the property owner next door is like, yeah, that looks nice.
So-
I really ought to do that to mine. Can I add?
So you're flexible.
Well, no, we used to be flexible. When we made the change to do the 100 required property owners, it had been a long time since we'd had bond counsel review our LID procedures. The former finance director and council directed us to do that. In reviewing the state statute, they made the determination that that is not actually something that we can do under the LID statute. We have to identify the properties at this point, and we can remove properties out if they do it themselves, but we're not able to add properties in.
Thank you for that clarification.
Mayor Kling. Daniel, the properties that are identified here, are the sidewalks attached or detached or both?
They're a mix of both.
So there is the ability or the leniency to detach a sidewalk to divert around a tree if possible.
Yes.
Would that be a request to you by the property owner to divert, if it was an attached sidewalk that they wanted to move, that would be something they would approach you with?
They would work with our project manager, Peter Nielsen, on that.
Okay. And then I would assume that the city's contractor is bonding these projects, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Where the homeowner might be able to find a contractor and take on that, or alleviate the bonding requirement if they chose to. That would be another way to save some dollars on their part.
Correct.
Now, as far as the curbing itself, is a property owner allowed to have a contractor replace curbing along with sidewalk? Or is there some requirement, I would imagine a design requirement to meet state standards as far as for that installation, is that correct?
Mayor, Councilman Haverfield, the majority of the properties, the required properties, the majority of them are strictly sidewalk replacement, not curbs. The main thrust of this program is to improve the sidewalks.
Okay.
And so if there's opportunity for us to replace the sidewalk and not have to touch the curb, that's how we have estimated them and would plan to construct them. And so that's.
Okay. Well, so there is leniency as far as on the part of the property owner to be able to pursue a different avenue other than the city's contractor. And it's just a communication process directly with Public Works.
Correct. They would need to have that done within the time frame of the LID, if it's included in this creation ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
And just one other question. The city does go with the lowest bid, is that correct? So is this bid out each year? How often do you rebid with a contractor?
We bid out for each individual LID for this work.
Okay, and however many bids come in, you go with the lowest bid?
Correct.
Right, or
It
the
is
quality?
state bidding law. We go
Right.
with the lowest responsible bidder.
Okay.
Mayor Kling, if I could ask. Daniel, I need some clarification in your report here. It says, sent letters to approximately 4,872 property owners in Zone E on June the 11th. Engineering has met with around 101 property owners, nearly half of which have been voluntary. Half of what? 4,872 or half of 101?
Half of the 101. 43 properties of the 101 they volunteered, they called us, said we would like to have some improvements done. The remaining 58 were properties that were identified through our inspection
Okay,
process.
well, all right, that's a little bit confusing, so thank you.
Mayor, Council, Daniel, what has been the participation rate, if you know off the top of your head, on the past LIDs? Is this about normal?
This is actually more volunteers than we've had in the past couple. So I believe the past couple were around 30, between 25 and 30 voluntary properties.
Okay.
So earlier in your testimony, you mentioned that this actually was, the mandatory LID was instituted about 3 years ago, is that correct?
That is correct.
Were you here at the time when that was? So I'm just wondering the why behind this, because I will have to say, even then, I struggle with it personally. And just from a citizen standpoint, it's very difficult because we have a city that you want to be nice, right? We've got to maintain and move things forward. The other side of that is that you do have seniors, you have people on fixed incomes, and even though it may be $10 a month, again, that fixed income's not changing. And so I really struggle with a mandatory LID. And as I listen to these testimonies, it's, for some people, it's awesome because it's a way that they can get their sidewalk repaired. And so I think it's a wonderful service that we can provide. It's the mandatory side of it. And so can you give me any background? I guess I didn't go back and listen to those minutes, or?
So the impetus for the change was a desire by the administration at that time to see a improvement in the quality of the sidewalks throughout town. There was a number of places here around City Hall where you had extremely dangerous sidewalks, 3-4 inch heaves, spalling, and all those types of things, where it made it very difficult for the pedestrians to safely traverse the sidewalk. And so there was a desire to see that improved in a more systematic and quicker way, I guess, rather than just sticking with the voluntary properties requiring, 100 a year to be improved.
And if it averages 3,000, that would be $300,000 a year. If the city wanted to go through and fund that, it would be $300,000, which is again a 1% property increase on.
And,
yeah, it's
and
expensive.
One of the things that was stated by Ms. Fisher, by Ms. Wilson, was that this should already be funded by property taxes and the taxes that we have. This is not something that's included in our street budgets. I spoke to Jim Brooks, our longest tenured city employee who happens to work in engineering. This code has not changed in his entire 40-plus years here at the city. To my knowledge, this has been this way for as long as the city's been here. I don't know for sure, but it's certainly been well over 40 years that this is the way that the city has funded or required sidewalks to be improved.
So, well, that's confusing to me because my understanding is we just changed it 3 years ago to mandatory. So help me understand, are you saying that the city didn't fund the repair of sidewalks?
Okay, so the city code placing the responsibility to maintain the sidewalk adjacent to your property has not changed.
Okay, so that's been in place 40 years.
That's been in place 40-plus years. What changed was the direction to require people to participate in the LIDs to improve
Mandatory.
their properties.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that. I appreciate it.
So, Madam Mayor, kind of a far-off question, I have no idea, but has there been any attempt whatsoever due to low income or handicap or whatever fixed incomes, where there'd be any other municipality have a federal grant program for those type of situations?
I'm unaware of any grants for improvements to sidewalks specifically due to low income. There was a Safe Routes to Schools program that improved sidewalks, though that has been rolled up into another grant funding source, though it's still kind of there, but not specified specifically to that one source. We've done grants for pedestrian ramp improvements through the CDBG grants. We do that yearly, but not specifically for the sidewalk portion.
And Madam Mayor, I guess I'm asking, I see Beth out there, is that even a potential possibility to include that in the CDBG for specific individuals that just do not have the means?
Mayor and Council, that's certainly a project that we could start putting forward as part of the CDBG package every year, where we set aside, pick a number that would be available to do sidewalk improvements for low-income households. They'd have to meet the federal requirements, but I'm sure that there are several out there that could participate in that. But we don't have any funds currently established for that purpose, but it's something
And currently, all those funds have already been designated for at least this next year,
I
correct?
believe they are currently all allocated.
Okay.
Mayor, Councilman Brunner, one other thing, we did look at in the past, the potential of using CDBG funds to subsidize within the LID, lower income properties. The difficulty there that we've run into in our discussions on that is that the CDBG funds and the rules that are associated with those would require the city to pay off the low-income ones if they met a certain
On the
threshold.
front end.
Rather than the CDBG funds.
Okay, I did. So we have a citizen that I think is asked, and since the public hearing is still open, if you would like to come forward and give your name and your address, we'll give you the opportunity to speak.
My name is Barbara Russell, and I live at 323 West Sherman, and that's one of the streets that's being done. My concern was not only with the price, mine is $8,000, okay, but also with the initial approach of, lady, you gotta do it. So that was what I felt when that was being done. Now, I have funds that I could do that, okay, and the amount was $8,000, and I got a confirmation of that within the last week or so. So part of it has to do with the social presentation of it. It was that kind of, you have to do it, lady, and so you're gonna do it, and no, you can't do the price unless you hire somebody else, so. It also concerns another thing for me in that I had flood irrigation initially. So when you have the street and you have the gutter and then you have the sidewalk, when they tear out that sidewalk and put something else in, it's going to tear apart that raised, what was for
Yeah.
not going over the top of it.
Keep the water in, yeah.
Yeah, so from me, there's a sense of, there isn't really any say in what's going on, and that you have to do it no matter what. And if I didn't have the funds, then that would really be even more difficult for me to take care of that. So I just think that the dynamics of how it was presented were not as subtle as they could have been.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. In response to that, I will say this next year, a goal that I have is good customer service. And so our team is here. And I know, Tom, you're taking notes. And we appreciate hearing that because the intent of the city of Nampa is that we have good customer service, that we treat our people with respect. And so thank you for sharing that. And we'll ensure that that is done as we move forward. So our public hearing is still open. Is there anyone else that had intended to testify? And is there any other discussion or reason to keep it open? Do we allow a second testimony? I need to ask that. The answer is no? Okay. Sorry about that, but thank you. Okay, so seeing none, I would stand for a motion to close public hearing.
Mayor, Council, can I ask a clarifying question from Mr. Badger? Because
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We just heard 8,000, and I thought you had mentioned the highest amount at 6,000. So if there's a discrepancy, I think clarity is important just for the decision.
When I
making.
heard that, I had the same thought, and I did pull up hers, and she is correct. Hers is $8,400. I misspoke, obviously, when that previous.
Would that be the high, or do we know if just, thank you, appreciate it.
It looks like the highest is actually at close 95, and that is a volunteer property.
Wow.
Mayor,
Thanks
can-
for the thought.
Daniel, while you're standing there, can you speak to the liability? Who assumes the liability for uneven surfaces on a sidewalk?
I would probably defer to our city attorney on that.
Okay, I didn't know whether to ask Mark or to ask you.
Madam Mayor, Councilman Everfield, there is premises liability on the city, even though the city code does require that adjoining property owners maintain the sidewalk within their right-of-way. That makes Nampa like every other city, as far as I'm aware. It is a controversial provision, but it is fairly nationwide. But that does not absolve the city of being liable for accidents that can arise from the condition of city property, which the sidewalk is. That was correctly identified by the letter, I think, that was received. On top of that, there are requirements under the American with Disabilities Act that set forth sidewalk specifications. And Daniel's familiar with those. They're pretty strict. It identifies deviations in height if you've got a break in the sidewalk, and deviations in gaps. And so there are potential ADA liabilities as well that the city, and this was all part of the discussion when 3 years ago when this was this quote-unquote forced LID was adopted by council. So yes, there are some liability issues that go along with property condition that the city would need to be aware of.
And I believe that was what drove the decision at that time, was the liability that the city was assuming. So,
Mark, could I ask you, what does the city of Caldwell do? Do they have a mandatory LID?
They do not have a mandatory LID, but there are times when, in the city of Caldwell, they will identify properties that have particularly bad sidewalk, dangerous sidewalk, and then we'll just simply make those property owners fix that sidewalk without the benefit of the LID. So that burden falls onto the property owner without the economies
Benefit
of
of the
scale and
funding.
financing.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Kling, if I could. So Daniel, let's take Mrs. Russell's $8,400. And the end of 10 years, how much interest would she have paid? What would that be? Because I don't think you specified the interest amount.
Depends on the bond, doesn't it?
Right, right.
So the estimate of her annual payment would be just under $1,100. So it would be, so 11,000, 1,500, or no, 2,500.
In interest. Took care of it. Okay, so it'd be an extra 2,500. Right. Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, so we do not have to vote on this tonight. We would be voting when the ordinance is put in place, and that would be at the next council meeting to approve the ordinance. And Councilman Levi, do you have a question or a comment?
I was just waiting to close public testimony to go to deliberation so I could give my comments, but if we're not going to be doing
Well,
that.
so my question for the council was, do we want to close public hearing? Do we want to leave it open? What's the will of the council?
I'd like to close public hearing, Madam Mayor.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so the public hearing is now closed, and it is opportunity for council to discuss. Councilman Levi. Councilwoman Levi.
Thank you. When this came before us 3 years ago, I have the same reservations that I had at that point. And I understand the liability issue to the city, and I understand that we need to be very responsible with the assets that we are given stewardship to protect as a city. But I also understand protecting our citizens. And I have a very definite, strong problem when we as government are overstepping and we're forcing our citizens to do something. And so that is my first objection to a forced LID. I do not have a problem with having the LID available because it does give a funding mechanism to our citizens that do want to use it and they feel the importance or they have the funds available that they can fix their sidewalks. I appreciate that. We have to look at our financial hardships, and those are for real. Whether it might be someone on a fixed income, it might be someone who is wounded, they have special needs, whatever. You cannot manufacture more money just because you get a letter simply from the city that says you have to fix your sidewalk. Well, that's great, but if there's no money, there's no money. And if it's going to be doing without groceries because you fixed your sidewalk, that's a really hard one to explain for humanitarian purposes. I'm currently in a piece of property that I rent, and I just had 2 trees come down. I had to barter to get those trees down. I know how expensive it is to have a tree taken down. And if you're going to be excuse me, putting a sidewalk down where trees need to come down, root systems need to be dealt with, it really is a self-defeating purpose. The other thing that I've heard from our citizens in the past is that we have a code, for instance, certain trees have to be planted. They don't have a choice, but they have to plant those trees, and those trees are the very trees that have caused the problems with the sidewalk. So once again, we have this circular reasoning, and we're forcing our citizens to, once again, fix their sidewalks, and we kind of created the problem with the sidewalk to begin with. So in light of all of that, I appreciate the fact we have this funding mechanism, and if we want to keep it voluntarily, great, you have my support. But because there's that forced portion there, I will be voting against it.
Thank you. Is there further discussion?
Yes, Mayor, if I could. I see that the Fishers have a different amount that they've proposed to fix their sidewalks, different from the cities, Dan. And so I wonder about whether we are getting the good dollar for what our citizens are getting. The other thing was the Mrs. Russell, $8,400 and $2,500 in interest. That's $11,900, and I don't know that that is a good number for me, and if I lived there, I would not want to have that imposed. I agree everything with what Councilwoman Levi said. I will be voting against this.
Madam Mayor, fellow council members, I was here 3 years ago and we struggled with whether to do the LID and force repairs. It came down to safety. You know, just a half-inch lip on a sidewalk, people don't watch their feet when they walk, they trip and fall. Trip and falls cause serious injury and death, particularly we're talking about elderly, has been mentioned here, elderly short on funds. But homeowners or property owners have a responsibility to keep their property reasonably safe, not extremely, but reasonably safe. I've represented people who have fallen, been paralyzed because of bad sidewalks. So there is a real liability, and some people will just say, I'm not repairing my sidewalk, I don't care no matter what. And we had some across the street here, I think for like an 8-inch bump, a gap, pretty bad. So that's what brought this about. And it sounds like we're all being mean and terrible to do a forced LID. The LID is a favor to help fund it, but you need to make your property safe, not because of liability, because you don't want people to get hurt on your property. That's my take. That was our take 3 years ago. It's no fun to vote for this, but it's responsible government. And I mean, what we say here could be in a lawsuit against the city as well in the future if somebody trips and falls on one of these bad sidewalks, obviously bad sidewalk.
Can you help me understand, and I apologize, boy, we're 45 minutes into public hearing 1, and so thank you all for your patience. But the one thing about it is this is important, because we're setting precedent in these decisions, and it's important to our citizens. Help me understand the fact that the sidewalk is technically the property of the city, but it's the homeowner's responsibility to maintain it. Can someone talk to me about that? Is it a state code? It's a city ordinance. Okay. And have we done the research as to how other cities are funding sidewalks and dealing with this particular issue? Yeah? Very similar way? Okay. And excuse me for asking a lot of questions, but it's important to me to understand because they're big decisions.
Mayor, the Title IX, Chapter 1, Section 8A1 is the section of city code that identifies the responsibility.
Thank you, Daniel.
Mayor, council, back to deliberation, if that's okay. We asked developers to do curb gutter sidewalk unless we grant a deferral on a case-by-case basis, which we did tonight, actually. And that gentleman, I don't know if he's still here, said that he's looking forward to the LID in a few years, and at which point he can finance the improvements that he can't afford right now at the moment. Because we have, I believe in the rule of law, so, and I realize that sidewalks deteriorate over time, trees grow, and it creates times of financial hardship. We've benefited from an LID to be able to finance over time. I'm also involved with members of the disabled community, and wheelchair accessibility along our sidewalks creates a big challenge, and I don't want members of our disabled community, I know there's not many in wheelchairs, but going onto the street and whatnot, and there have been accidents. It's a terrible tragedy when people who face that sort of hardship have to traverse their neighborhoods, and it becomes sort of a challenge. And so, like Councilman Skog, there's no joy in having to vote for something of this nature, hearing about the unique hardships that some people are presented with. However, at the same time, it does create the funding mechanism. I don't want to resort to, say, a policy like Caldwell, where we just, you're told to do this to comply, and you're just told to pay upfront. This creates a funding mechanism. And if people can find a better bid, like the Fishers found, and hopefully you do a little more research, and there's a mechanism for them to not go with the city, from what I understand. If they can find a better rate and do that, then that's, I'm glad that that mechanism's in place. So I mean, I will support this, just as we ask developers to put in curb gutter sidewalk, we're gonna continue to ask developers to do that moving forward. And as sidewalks face the end of their life cycle, they need to be maintained. And I know that that's a cost of stewardship, but in order for us to be a city that has connectivity, for especially of vulnerable members of our community that find it challenging to transport, they rely on micro mobility, and they have to use our sidewalks, and they have to be maintained. So I will support the LID.
So what is the will of the council? We do not have to take a vote and a roll call. We can defer that vote to the ordinance next week, or do you want to take a roll call vote tonight, and then again, we'll approve the ordinance at the next, actually at the next meeting?
Madam Mayor, fellow council members, I'd rather not let it simmer any longer, so I'll make the motion that we approve the creation of a local improvement district, LID 166, as presented.
Second.
Discussion, Mayor, if I may. So I'm not real clear. Daniel, you said one thing, Beth kind of said it. So have we researched fully enough as far as if there's other funding possible for low-income specific situations? Or is there further research that needs to be done?
Mayor and council, I actually just emailed Daniel. One thing we could consider, if there are individuals within this group that meet the low-income requirements for CDBG, we could do that analysis now and then put forward a project within our funding year that will come up this spring to fund those the following year. It's good to keep them separated by a year because it does require the Davis-Bacon wages. So if you had CDBG mixed in at the same time, it taints the whole project. So it does create extra costs for those that aren't in the grant piece of it. So that might be one option that we could pursue.
Mayor?
Yes.
Beth, so if this were to go under something like a CDBG funds to help lower income people, what does that look like? They're still paying an amount, but
Mayor and council, that could be up to your discretion how you want to design the program. It could be a grant program where we just go in and we make the improvements like we do with the ped ramps on the corners, or it could be modeled after our we could just adjust our critical home loan repair program to include sidewalks. So that is a loan program, so it does get paid back. A lot of them are paid back when the home is sold, and some of them have a minimal, there's some that pay $50 a month until for the life of the loan, and there's some that are deferred until the sale. So there's two ways to do it.
Thank you.
So it sounds like in the process, though, that when we do the LID, we're doing it by zone. And so this would require us to identify a zone, work with the individual homeowners to identify before we do the work if they qualify, and then it would be out of zone that repair work. So we would end up doing a twofold process, which would definitely be more challenging, but it would afford the opportunity for a percentage possibly of that to be covered through a grant and then the home loan. What is the difference in the interest rate that you would get is it similar with the homeowners program that you mentioned?
Mayor and Council, the rate on the homeowners, I'd have to check with our team. I'm not sure. I know it's fairly minimal, and in some instances, it's zero. So there's a sliding scale depending on the income availability of the homeowners. So it's, I don't have that number with me.
So are we limited in the number of people that can participate in that program?
Just by the amount of funding that we have, and we have plenty of funding at this time. We've had a lot of our participants sell their homes in the last 12 months with the market the way it is. So we've had a lot of program income coming in.
Okay.
So Mayor Kling, I have a question for you, and maybe Mark. So with this new information, a new alternative, shall we go through with this, or what do we do now, if this is a new avenue that we may look at?
Well, I tell you what, we could actually, and it would be right, we do have a motion and a second on the floor. So at that, the council would need to take a vote, and you could potentially not allow it to move forward with the intent that we do the research and we bring it back and have a new motion with the answer to these questions at the next meeting before we approve. Well, we've got to write the ordinance though, so we're going to have to come back and revisit what that ordinance actually says. So we'd have to come back and revisit it. Legal. Mr. Hilty, would you like to, is there something different that you would say?
No, I think from a procedural standpoint, you're right. There is a motion and a second, and you're in discussion, so that would need to be dealt with for the record. And then that might give us the answer. I think what staff is looking for, Daniel, this is one of the steps in the LID formation. If the vote is to approve this, then the staff will bring back the ordinance. If the vote is not to approve this, I think we're probably done.
Okay, so with that, then I guess we go back and ask for the motion to be amended? And that would be the question for Councilman Skog and Hogaboam. Would you be willing to amend the motion to allow the research to be included into this to where we could research the possible funding?
Madam Mayor, the possible funding would involve Davis-Bacon if we put any part of it into this CBG section. So if we did something like that, would be for next year for a different section somewhere else, so we don't have to do Davis-Bacon. The wages would have to go up for every bid, if my understanding is right, if we put it into this. So I don't want to get into that mess.
I'm also, I'd be open to hearing more, but I don't think that would change. If the LID is established and there's ongoing research, then I'm, certainly open to that. But I think I have a lot of questions about how you're doing income verification for members who live in it and whether we're dispatching our city staff to do tax, looking at tax records. Beth's shaking her head. I mean, I don't want to put hours of labor on a already very worked city staff to do income verification. I'm sensitive to the financial hardship, and if there is some mechanism that comes forward for future consideration, I'm open to that. But there's been several, we did one LID earlier, we've continued to do this. We asked new developers to put in curb gutter sidewalk. This is our policy, and I understand that there's homes of various value and people of various means to repair their sidewalk. But if we're going to be a community that says that the disabled and others and children can safely move around in our community, it's what we're obligating new developers to do, then it's something that we have to maintain. So,
call for the question.
Actually, we're still in discussion phase, so I have one other question. Can someone actually say in this LID that if they say, I am definitely under the income levels, and they can identify a different funding mechanism, can they ask to be withheld from this LID if they can show that they have another funding and we can identify another funding mechanism? Because by voting yes tonight, I want to make sure that I understand, because if we have someone that cannot afford it, and we did identify a different funding mechanism, because I understand the Davis-Bacon wages, we do not want to bring that into this project. As Beth stated, it would need to come at a later time. Can someone communicate a hardship and allow them to step back?
Mayor, no, there's not a process for that, to remove someone from the LID unless they have had the work done themselves for something else. If that work were being done through a CDBG program, that would taint the entire project. If they were to come up with another funding source outside of, something that had Davis-Bacon requirements, and they had the work done, then yes, certainly we would not assess them anything under the LID.
And if by chance this LID, I don't know what the vote's going to be, if it did not pass, can we bring it back again?
Certainly, one potential option would be to approve the LID with the removal of the required properties and only proceed with the voluntary properties, or any combination, whatever the will of the council. It would be up to them what it would look like at that point, and at that point, we would bring forward the ordinance to reflect the will of the council.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, the question then is, so if that did happen, if this motion was amended, and you had 43 properties, when you were originally considering 101 properties, how does that average price then change for those 43 properties?
We tend to estimate high. We estimate based on historical bids that we've received from the previous year's LID and the other bid stuff that we have. So I would not anticipate any significant increase in costs going from 100 properties to 43 properties.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so unless there's further discussion, we'll call for the vote.
Rodriguez?
No.
Brunner?
Yes.
Levi?
No.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Vogelboom?
Yes.
Skog?
Yes.
Okay, that concludes this public hearing. 8.1, we are 1 hour in and we have 3 more public hearings. Let's enter into our next public hearing and then we may take a break. So public hearing number 2, 8.2 on the agenda. This is an annexation and zoning to RD, which is 2-family residential for Mattingly Creek subdivision at 2008 West Orchard Avenue. This is a 3.5 acre portion of the southeast quarter of the southwest quarter of section 17, T3N R2W, BM, for 11 two-unit single-family residential attached lots on 3.5 acres for a total of 22 dwelling units on 3.5 acres of 6.29 dwelling units gross per acre for Pontifex Capital LLC, represented by Bob Taunton, Taunton Group LLC. And good evening, Bob.
Mayor Kling, members of council, my name is Bob Taunton. My address is 2724 South Palmetier Way in Boise, and I'm here representing the applicant, and we're loading up a PowerPoint here. It'll be quick, but I thought there's some images that would be useful. I thought you would be taking a break, and I'd be able to do this.
I'm sorry, we did not.
Do you,
Is that a bad idea?
Take a break now.
Mayor,
Do you
can we
need
take
a, do you need a break, or are we there? Because this will be a pretty short one.
Okay.
I think we're good.
And we don't have any
There we
minutes
go.
on that.
Perfect.
Okay.
Is this close enough?
Yes, this is
Okay.
perfect. Thank
Good.
you.
Thank you. Pontifex Capital is a local Boise developer, by the way. Next slide. Okay. So the location is on Orchard Avenue between Midway and Middleton. We're on a minor collector, or at least a planned minor collector, 80-foot right-of-way, 3 lanes. There's going to be a signal that's programmed at Orchard and Middleton this year. And the Silvercrest Estates to the north has private streets, so there was no possibility of us doing any connectivity with those streets. So all of our traffic and our access is going to come from Orchard. Next slide. This is just a quick aerial to give you the character of the area. We have an existing subdivision on the south side of the street, and then we have the subdivision that I mentioned earlier, and we're in a parcel that's an enclave parcel. It's a county island, if you like, and more rural in its character. Next slide. The site is well-served with utilities. We have sewer, water, and municipal irrigation directly adjacent to the property. The Pioneer Irrigation District is the irrigation district, and there was a question at Planning Commission about were we going to somehow disrupt either the delivery of water or the recovery of water, and obviously we're going to have to respect all of those situations, and so there won't be any change for any of the adjacent property owners. Next slide. This is the comprehensive plan map. We are medium density residential. One of the provisions in the policy is to provide a variety of housing that caters to a diverse population, and we think that is done by offering housing differentiation. If you recall the previous slide, this area is dominated by single-family detached, so we're proposing a different character, a different type of product to diversify that product. Obviously, we want to meet different income levels and different life stages, and I think our product does satisfy some of that. Property is zoned R1 in Canyon County, and you can see the enclave area, so we're contiguous to the city on 3 sides. Next slide. Okay, our request is for annexation and zoning. We'd like to do RD 2-family duplex residential. We have a preliminary plat for 22 buildable lots. Our density is 6.29 units per acre. In the comp plan, the medium density residential can go up to 9 units. And I should add that we're in agreement with all the conditions of approval that were proposed in the staff report. Okay, so there's some existing improvements on the parcel. The oval there is depicting some improvements that are going to remain. The other improvements are going to be removed. And the reason for that is that through the purchase agreement, the purchaser has agreed to a life estate for the existing property owner. And we'll explain in the plan how that works in a sec. Next slide. So our features, I guess, the top things that we would describe the project with is that with duplex, it's very compatible with single-family detached. I mean, it really lives the same way that a detached house does. You just have a common wall on one side. The plan that we have is very compact and efficient, which really speaks to affordability. So a combination of duplexes and a very efficient plan is going to allow our developer and builder to be able to deliver product at prices that are below a newly constructed single-family detached house. There's minimal privacy impact with the adjacent subdivision because we have no back-to-back lots. And so I think that's favorable for them. We're dedicating right-of-way for Orchard. And then just a couple of points, a traffic impact study was not required because of the size of the project. And we also have no requirement for a secondary access because we're less than 29 lots. Next slide. Okay, this is the features of the plan. I've listed the lot sizes there. There's 2 lots that we'll talk about in a second that have to do with the life estate. So I've left those out of the description because of what will happen in the future likely. Each of the duplexes has a usable yard, 6-foot privacy fence. We have a landscaped streetscape, an on-site stormwater retention area in the northeast corner up there at the top of the slide. The orchard landscape buffer, which is normally 25 feet, we're doing a 30-foot buffer. We had enough room to be able to enhance that situation. Next slide. So this is the life estate parcel that was part of the agreement, the purchase agreement. So it's a house and a shed. And so we had to figure out in the planning how we were going to accommodate that. And we were fortunately able to do that. Next slide. The box shows where the house and the shed are, so you can see that we had to deviate the alignment of the street slightly to be able to complete that. There's a parcel, a lot, that's immediately behind it, so they have north-south orientation, where all the other lots are east-west, and I'll explain in the next slide how that's going to work. So between the shed and the house will be a 20-foot easement providing access to that back lot. Our intention is not to build on that lot, but it'll stay as a legal lot with access until such time as the life estate is terminated. Next slide. So when that happens, we will do a lot line adjustment, and we will rearrange the lots so that they're east-west and not north-south. The easement will be vacated, and so the lots will be somewhere between 55 and 60 feet wide, depending on what we finally choose as the lot line situation, by 123 feet deep. So when that happens, we have no idea. I mean, it could happen a short time after the property is developed. Depends on the interests of the current property owners, how long they'd like to stay on the property. Next slide. With the widening that we're going to be doing on Orchard, we have opportunities now to create left turn pockets going into Lotus Springs, coming from the east, and then from the west, we have a left turn pocket to go into our subdivision. So we've got adequate safe turns there. Next slide. Okay, at Planning Commission, we didn't have any conceptual elevations or floor plans to show, so we now have some, so I thought I would include them just so you can have a sense of the character. Again, these are duplex units. I really like the elevations that the architect has done. There's lots of articulation in the elevation. The roof lines vary, which is, the kind of character that you'd like to have. The plan is to have 3 different elevations. So there's really 11 buildings, 22 duplex units, but really 11 buildings. So it's not like we can have a whole bunch of plants. You just can't amortize that cost over such a small number of units. But we can vary the elevations with different roof lines and so on. So this is just the first attempt. Next slide shows them in perspective. So again, you can see there's a lot of articulation. And then the next slide shows the, oops, should be a floor plan in there. Nope, I guess not. Okay. Well, there was a floor plan, I thought. I may have deleted it accidentally. But they're 3-bedroom units. They have a master down. Upstairs are 2 bedrooms, but there's an opportunity to do a 3rd upstairs because there's an open down space. Anyway, so they're very nice plans, 1,672 square feet, which is certainly more than adequate for the size of house. And with that, I'm available for questions.
Mayor Kling. Bob, a couple of quick questions for you. You call these duplexes, but in reality, they're townhomes because you have a property line between the units?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so that's a 2-hour firewall separation between the two. So these are meant to be owner occupied, not rentals.
Correct.
So that 0 lot line was the main thing I was looking at. I was counting up your lots and just wanted to make sure. So as far as your rear setback on lots 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the left side, what is your intended setback as far as rear setback?
Our engineer is here. He might be able to answer that question for you. I'm not sure
Or I can ask Robert later, but it looks like 15 feet is the normal setback for a rear. It doesn't look like the first 2 duplexes have that much of a setback capability to them.
Well, again, Mayor and Council Member, these are depictions. Again, they were prior to us having any architectural designs, so they were just illustrations of.
Yeah, they're just placeholders at this
Correct,
point.
yes.
So I guess if there is a development agreement that needs to be put in place to ensure that the setbacks are maintained, I guess that's just a question we just need to make sure Norm answers for us.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Are there any, Councilwoman Levi?
Thank you. Sir, just thinking, I was pleased to hear that these would be owner-occupied.
Yes.
And with that, and the 1,600 square feet, et cetera, kind of what price range are these going to be?
Well, I think all of us know that there's been dramatic increases in labor costs and construction costs. So really, until they're put out for bid, we won't know what the prices are. But again, as I said earlier, we certainly are looking at price points that are below what you would find for, typical, similar sized, single-family detached new construction. So I'm afraid at this point I can't answer that specifically.
I respect that. The nature of my question comes from one, we have a public hearing coming up on the impact fees, and I'm looking at something of this sort, saying, is it going to be of the viable dollar amount that it's going to be able to pay for itself, and what kind of impact is it going to have in the long run? And so that's kind of where my question was going. Thank you.
Any further questions at this time? Thank you so much. You will have the opportunity at the end of the public hearing to come back and address any other questions. So at this time, we'll move to the staff report, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Norm?
Yes, Mayor and Council, the request came before the Planning Commission, and they have recommended approval of this annexation. They also, on their November 27th meeting, approved the preliminary plat as a part of this. The project proposed zoning and annexation does conform with the comp plan for medium-density residential as outlined. And these are, again, single-family attached. They're not duplexes. They're zero-lot line townhomes in 2 units of 2. The Planning Commission, again, recommends approval, conforms with the comp plan. The proposed zoning is acceptable. Basically, you can read through the findings that the commission recommended, but it was all in positive in support of this proposal. Certainly, the RD zone is appropriate as under the comprehensive plan for this proposed development. And again, we're not making the decision on the preliminary plat that was approved by the commission. And with regards to a development agreement, this would be required to meet standard RD setbacks.
Can you give us what those setbacks are?
Which would be the 20 foot in the front, 5 foot on the sides, and
15 in the rear?
I don't know that it even requires a 15 in the rear, unless there's an easement that requires.
Okay.
Typically, it's just a 5 foot rear setback, even in RS zones. If there's an easement back there as a part of the plat, then it would be the width of that easement.
Okay, I'll look that up. Mayor Kling, are you through with your presentation then?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Let me ask you a question about parking requirements then. The 20-foot setback in the front, if 2 parking spaces are required per unit, is that correct?
Yes.
1 in the garage, 1 on the parking slab in front of the unit, that is allowed? Okay. I had heard that there was something coming down, and I just wanted to confirm from you that it's not a problem counting the parking space in front of the garage.
The only issue is that historically, that has to be, there has to be 20 feet there in
Right.
front of where the sidewalk.
That's why the 20-foot landscape setback satisfies that requirement as well. Okay.
Are there any other further questions for Norm at this time?
Mayor, I just wanted to clarify, the location of the proposed development falls within the fire department there off of Midland and Middleton and, oh goodness, what is that, Flamingo? Is that correct?
That would be the closest station, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, so this is a public hearing, and this evening, we actually don't have anyone signed up other than the applicant to testify on behalf of, and no one signed up to oppose. Is there anyone in the audience that had intended to sign up for this particular public hearing? Seeing none, this is an opportunity for the applicant to come back and answer any questions that you heard posed to Norm or any response you'd like to give before we close the public hearing.
Mayor Kling, members of council, I have no further comments to make.
Okay, thank you. Okay, unless there are any further questions, I'd stand for a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, council discussion.
Mayor Kling, I'd like to make a motion if I could. Make a motion to annex, annexation and zoning to RD for, at 2008 West Orchard Avenue for Pontifex Capital LLC for Mattingly Creek subdivision, also included with staff reports. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Brunner,
Yes.
Vogelboom,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Skog,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. So we do have 2 more public hearings, and if you all do not mind, I would like to take a 5-minute break before we step into the next public hearings. We'll try to be quick, but we'll just do a 5-minute break if anyone needs one, and we'll be right back.
Do you want to trade for a while? Do you think I can change my voice?
Four.
Yeah. I'm reliable, so. Not sidewalk. Well, it needs to go on this other side.
Okay, so we're ready for a public hearing, 8.3 on the agenda. This is an action item, a variance to the City of Nampa zoning ordinance 102320K, limiting the allowable number of subdivision identification signs in an RS, single-family residential zoning district, to 1 sign. The applicants are requesting 2 signs per entry for the 85.2 acre subdivision parcel of land located on the west side of North Canada Road, north of Cherry Lane and south of Ustick Road, on the southeast quarter section, 1 T3N R2W BM for Craig Lunsford, representing Apex Sign Company and Toll Southwest LLC. Is the applicant here this evening? Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. My name is Craig Lunsford with Apex Sign Company, P.O. Box 2002, Eagle, Idaho, 83616. My client, Coleman Homes, Toll Brothers Company, is requesting your approval for 2 subdivision entry signs for Fairhaven subdivision. Fairhaven subdivision is west of the busy Canada Road, and which the 2 mirrored signs will be facing north and southbound traffic. The 2 signs will mirror each other. If you don't mind, thanks, Norm. The 2 signs will mirror each other on East Canyon Crossing and provide an appealing, symmetrical look to the entrance of the subdivision. As you can see, the sign here, respectively, the 2 signs will be 6 feet overall height, 32 feet wide, and it'll have a slight radius of 40 inches to provide a little bit more character. The structure will include a beautiful stone, what they call an Ash Creek stone. I have a sample if you would like to see it. The letters Fairhaven are what we call a reverse pan channel letter. And I brought a sample of what you typically see, like a restaurant or more of a retail type establishment. This is what we call a pan channel, where the LEDs are on the inside, whereas you really can't see in this rendering, but this is a reverse pan, so the letter will just reverse and we'll paint the backside, the returns, a dark bronze, and the illumination will be on the inside, so it provides a nice halo. So it's a subtle illumination. It's not at you, it's away from you, and provides a nice halo. The deer itself, the logo will be a flat cutout, not illuminated, aluminum piece of product, and it'll be painted a dark brown. The sign itself, Fairhaven with the deer, is approximately 26 square feet, which is well within what is allowed in terms of square footage for signage. The planter box that you see will be made out of wood, a wood veneer, and that is approximately 15 feet long. And then the structure will be capped off with a 3-inch beautiful stone cap with a 2-inch overhang. Engineering calls for approximately 6 inches of steel and an embedment of 3 feet by 4 feet. I appreciate your time this evening, and I'll stand for any questions.
If there are no questions, then you will have the opportunity to come back at the end of the public hearing, and thank you.
Thank you.
Norm?
I think it's pretty clear what the applicant is requesting. Actually, there are a number of these subdivisions around town. We haven't done an inventory, but there are other subdivisions in the city of Nampa that have these dual entry signs. we haven't done an inventory, but I've seen them around town, and they do exist, and technically those are in violation of this variance, or this code section as well. I'm told that most jurisdictions in the valley, subdivisions, allow these dual entry signs by code. And staff's recommendation is that should the council determine to approve this variance, that we actually consider an amendment to our code that would say the dual entry signs they wouldn't require a variance to be located in our city. That being said, the applicant and/or the city council in this case would have to kind of get a variance on this under the idea of a unique site circumstances, basically being able to orient the signs so they can be seen from both north and south, and possibility of doing that with just one, I guess. So anyway, that would be the unique site circumstance, should you choose to identify with that and consider that as a possible solution under a variance for this current proposal. I've not received any communications from any residents, property owners, et cetera, in this area who are expressing opposition to this variance request as proposed. Any questions?
Mayor Kling. Norm, is the variance for the lettering? Because
It's for having two signs instead of one.
so lettering on two, I look at this as more of a screen wall than it is a,
What we're talking about, there's actually two signs, one on either side of the entry.
right. And as long as they're held back so that it doesn't create a vision issue with traffic coming, I look at it more as whether it's a vinyl fence or a stone fence. It's just the lettering that's being placed on each side that's,
Yeah, we're just talking about the two identifications, is all we're talking about.
yeah.
And again, I was thinking of something else to tell you. Oh, yes, there is a condition, there's a number of conditions that we recommend to be a part of this, and they're listed in the staff report as well. And engineering has concern over the actual placement of these as well. And the design will need to show that the signs, footings, and foundations, and will be required to provide a minimum of 5 feet of clearance from the outside of the gravity irrigation pipe or manholes. And there needs to be a site plan that will be drawn to an engineering scale in order to verify that. And that's one of the main conditions, plus the other conditions here, they're listed in the staff report.
So Madam Mayor, if I may, question, it's a clarification for me, then I thought the variance is because there's two signs rather than one that mirror each other. It's not, the lighting is not the issue, correct?
Lighting isn't the issue.
Okay, so it's just,
The ordinance doesn't speak to the lighting.
okay.
Whether it's.
That was my understanding, I just need to clear, okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions for Norm at this time? Thank you, Norm. So this is a public hearing, and we have three people signed up in support, and no one signed up to oppose. The first person that signed up to support is Craig, yourself, and so we'll move to the other two and let you come at the end if there's any other questions. So Bill, is it Stanton?
I'm actually part of the applicant team. I have nothing further to add.
Okay, thank you. And then Chad, excuse me.
Again, part of the applicant team.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else that was here to support this evening that did not have the opportunity to sign up or desire to? Seeing none, I have no one signed up to oppose. Is there anyone that had intended to oppose this issue that did not get signed up? Okay, seeing none. This is an opportunity for the applicant to come back and leave us with any last comments related to the staff report.
Madam Mayor and the council, we will provide engineering, and the setbacks are within the guidelines of the 5 foot. Correct. We talked about that earlier, so it'll be in compliance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Does the council have any questions for the applicant or staff at this time? And seeing none, I would stand for a motion to close public hearing.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Council discussion.
I like him. I have 2 rocks in front of our subdivision. But you could.
Stand for a motion?
Madam Mayor, fellow council members, I find that there's a unique site circumstance needing the two signs here, although it's a little bit minimal, and I recommend that we do change this code as quickly as we can, but I recommend we, and make the motion that we grant the variance to the City of Nampa zoning ordinance section 102320K as recommended.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Vogelboom?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Skog?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. And so noted by staff, correct, on that code, right? Okay, thank you. Okay, now for our last public hearing, which I think we have a number of people here this evening for this last public hearing. It's 8.4 on the agenda. This is an amendment to the Nampa City Code Title III, Chapter 7, which is developmental, it's impact fees. So, Ann Westcott, thank you.
And Westcott Galena Consulting, 1925 North Montclair, Boise. And I'm sure you're all really tired of seeing me here. But I'm impressed that all these people are here for this.
Yes.
Usually I'm not this exciting.
And you've done a good job, and we've appreciated your presentations.
Thank you. Well, this one is very short. Patrick just asked me to do just a summary for you of what you have in front of you. On the first slide, if my assistant can get it together. Well, you have a copy in front of you, and there are copies available to everyone. Amy did such a lovely job of this graphic that has been well communicated out to the public. That does show how we got to this place. And I would just specifically point out that we had quite a lot of interaction with your advisory committee. Many of those members are here tonight, most of them, I believe. We did already hold, we had a joint briefing with you and the P&Z. We had a hearing with the P&Z. They've already adopted the CIPs, or the capital improvement plans, into your comp plan. And so here we are doing what's required next in state statute, is to hold a public hearing on an amendment to fees. Yay, Patrick, all right, you can. I'll need your help. So we will remember the police capital improvement plan is primarily focusing on the 26 additional officers needed to continue your current level of service. If the city wants to have more officers than that and increase its level of service, that's a lovely goal, but impact fees won't pay for that. So you'll see that what we have here is just the growth portion of a new police facility. As that becomes clearer in your minds, this is at least placeholding that for you, so you can be saving that money for that. And then vehicles for the 26 new officers, that'd be 13 vehicles, and then some equipment. And so that gets you to a $4.3 million growth-related impact fee. Growth-related CIP. You see that at the top. We do the math, and at the bottom, you come to a fee of $359.21 for non-residential. We compare that to zero, because although you used to have a police impact fee, it was taken away 3 years ago, mostly because the city just wasn't quite sure what they were doing, didn't want to be collecting money at that time. So this fee of $359 is less than what your residents have already paid in for the existing infrastructure, and it is also commensurate with all the other police fees in the valley. Any questions on police? Now on to parks. Parks is primarily intending to use the impact fees to continue the level of service that you have in the community of 3.2 acres per thousand. And that's basically the development of Ora Brandt, Midway, and the dog park. That's a pretty significant amount of money and a significant contribution to a very high level of service that you have that's really kind of not heard of in this state. So you'll also see there is one pool for growth. That soccer park is on there. Certainly some of it could be growth eligible in the future once you get clear on how the rest of that will be funded. So that's $16.5 million over 10 years in growth-related capital. And that brings us to almost a $1,700 fee for single-family home. Remember, we don't charge non-residential for parks. This is an increase of $457, and the primary increase is that addition of that pool to serve the north end of the city for growth. Fire, we remember that this is not only just the city's fire department, but we're partnering with the rural fire district. That advantage is you're all using the same stations and apparatus anyway. We might as well have growth in the county pay for its share. And I will pause to say we had a very positive meeting with the Canyon County Commission. They unanimously supported fire districts collecting impact fees, and we've begun the process to do so. So I can retire as soon as this is done. So we take this $8.7 million for 2 stations and then a remodel of 2 stations to add that squad vehicle. That squad vehicle is the chief's pilot, essentially, to see if you can efficiently respond to calls without having so many new engines. So this will be a way to not have there be 3 stations on that CIP this time. So that ends up being a $8.7 million CIP, $560 for your impact fee. That is higher than what your current fees are, and the difference really is you need the 2 stations. You've needed the 2 stations all along, and usually we've constrained the CIP just to have 1. The Impact Fee Advisory Committee asked that we just tell it like it is. With the growth that you're facing, we're looking for 2. And because we're able to spread it out by growth in the unincorporated area, it still does not raise the fee to more than what people have already paid into the area. And it is still, actually, of all of the cities and districts in the 2-county area, I think it's the very lowest fee everywhere. So maybe not Boise's. Boise's might be a little lower, but they are redoing theirs next year. And then we'll just skip through this one because it's, you know that you have, as you've already talked about tonight, $40 million worth of streets capital that is impact fee eligible, and that's that red circle at the bottom right corner. And if we take that $40 million and then we split it out by the 5 different land use types, divide it by growth, you can see the impact fees at the bottom there. $2,800-ish for single family, $1,600 for multifamily, almost $7 for retail, $4 for office, and $1.50 for industrial. Now, yes, we'll look to that chart to the right and say these fees are completely different than what we're currently charging. I will give a reward to anyone here who can tell me why that is.
Exaction.
Yes. We are putting roadway projects for the first time into your impact fee program. So instead of being exacted for roadways, everyone will pay their share of roadways. And so we're charging what it has always cost. We're just putting the incidents on a different person. I put the ACHD, as the mayor pointed out, and actually I'd never thought about it, you are the largest self-serving city, that all of the other communities comparable to your community have ACHD fees on top of them. They have for a very long period of time. Your raising your fees still has this community lower, only slightly, but lower than any of the communities in Ada County. So the grand total here would be about $5,400 for a single family house, $4,200 for a multifamily, $734 for retail, $473 for office, and $2.01 for industrial per square foot. Compare that to the current fees, and you look at the amount of change in the far right bottom part of the table, and you see that yes, this is a significant step that you're making, and that's why I feel comfortable that we do our due diligence in working with the development community. We have residential and commercial developers, community members on the advisory committee, and I generally feel that if I can come to council and say that their citizen advisory committee, P&Z, and everyone else has become comfortable with this, that I hope you might as well. And I stand for questions. Or I stand to come back later for questions, whatever you'd like.
Mayor Kling, is Jeff going to come back up so I can ask him the questions I was going to ask at the beginning of the meeting tonight, or?
You're the boss.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and do that.
Okay, I was just wondering who's going to help us with 6.7 million per year?
That would not be me.
Yeah. Where those dollars are going to come from?
Councilman?
Choked you up, didn't it?
Yeah.
He does that to a lot of people.
Mayor, Councilman?
You want me to repeat my question?
Yeah, could you please?
Okay, as a part of the strategic plan, in our packet, it indicates that 67 million of the total CIP will need to come from city funds, which is an average of 6.7 million per year. Now, you talked about having a vehicle registration fee. Now, that doesn't include the grants that we're going after. We talked about a 1% of the 3% allowable increase per year. We could give 1%, but that's not going to come up to 6.7 million. So is there a funding approach that you can throw at us that makes sense?
We have a chart to show you.
Oh, okay.
Okay, this is the capital project proposed revenue distribution. So you look at the $40,000 is that lower block. That is the impact fee amount. The city matching funds are the 26 million in the, I think it's red. I'm colorblind, so I might screw everybody up in the room, all right? It's one of, and then the freight and safety grants, and the top amount is state routes funded by ITD. Those are we're gonna be pursuing ITD partnerships and also freight grants partnerships with ITD to leverage the match money from the city side. Is that? Council Haverfield, so when you ask for where's the 6.7 million per year city funds, what that's referring to is actually a combination of city funds and impact fee funds. So if you take that 40 million and that 26 million, that's roughly the 67 million over the 10 years. So that's where that number is. So it's not actually, when they say city funds, it's not all city funds. It's a combination of impact and city funds. And that's from Ann's graph there.
And that was my understanding. This is a unified approach that involves city dollars and the private dollars from the developers coming in to develop property, so that they know that we have an invested interest, obviously, as well, and the people that are already here are going to be helping to pay for this, for maintenance of current streets and infrastructure, as well as the new improvements that they're going to be providing. So I just wanted to be clear from your standpoint that this is an understanding that we're taking on as a council when we make this decision, that there are dollars associated with this, and how we're going to come up with the dollars to make this happen as our part of the investment. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, yeah, the city's portion is that red, so the 26 million. So, the note, like the note says, if you come up with 25%, we'll be able to leverage 75% from other sources.
Okay, so when we get into our budget process next year, we're going to need to have some help, creative help, to how we're going to come up with those dollars.
So basically, the path forward, as Jeff was showing in his plan earlier today, is it's a 1% increase of property tax out of the 3% available would get you that 26 million over the 10-year period.
It would?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't hear that. Okay, so that's helpful.
Yeah, that's, Mayor, Council, I thought the 1%, depending on the allotment, we were looking at a 12-year, 15-year, I thought that was getting to the CIP, but you're saying that only 1% without reappropriation of GO money would get us there in 10 years?
Yes. And in past presentations, we said we might even be able to not do 1% property taxes over that 10-year period if some other different scenarios happen, like the registration fee. We might not need as much. So So every year for 10 years, there was a 1% property tax, we could get that 26 million of city funds to cover the match for the impact fee.
So that would, clarification, so Mayor, that would, so 2.6 million per year. That's what that 1% would cover.
That's correct.
Okay. And anything as far as registration increase, or whatever that would just be increased dollars to do more?
Well, when that comes up, that'll be, a question we'll bring to the council. Do you want to do a property tax increase, or do you want to use this registration fee to fund other needs that we know that we have?
So that would subsidize rather than maybe going to full 1%.
Right,
Okay,
so,
thanks.
yeah.
Then a clarifying question, the various graphs that you have that are marked at 12 and 15 years, that's not to match the impact fee match that we're required within the 10-year CIP. That would be the bigger plan to try to get where our needs are to maintain level of service over really a decade to 2 decade sort of span.
That's correct,
Okay.
Councilman, yes.
All right, thanks for that clarification.
Are there any other questions at this time? No. Thank you for the presentation. And Ann, thank you. So appreciate it. So this is a public hearing. And we actually, this is very different than the last public hearing. We don't have anyone signed up that is opposing this evening. Is there anyone that is opposing this that had intended to sign up? Okay, so with that, we're going to move into the support. We have quite a large number of people that are supporting this initiative this evening. And I would like to encourage us this evening, if you would like to just say, you know what, I support that comment, it will shorten our evening. If someone has already said what you were going to say, which is highly likely. But it is a public hearing, and everyone does have the right to speak for 3 minutes. And so we want to give you that opportunity. So the first person signed up is Hubert Osborne. And even though I said your name, I'll let you give your address and all that.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, it's a great day. 4199 East Switzer Way is where my wife and I reside. And each of you got a letter from me. I hope Mark does let you read it. And I did put separate names on it, so it is individual letters. I'm satisfied with Public Works' rendition of how they can pay for this from the city's standpoint. They did not mention the franchise fee on garbage, which is $1.3 million. That should increase over time because our garbage increases. Most of my comments will be on streets because that's where I think the biggest need is. If anybody has noticed the traffic lately, it should be obvious that years of maintenance only has put us in this position. And I recall Michael Foose as long as 10 years ago crying about not getting enough money for street maintenance. So this is a long-term problem which has caught up with us. Excuse me, Michael.
He brought his hanky, we're okay.
Streets for many years have been underfunded, and I would suggest that traffic is at the top of the frustration list for newcomers and current residents alike. Costs of intersections are not even considered in new development. And developers do not pay this fee. It is added on to the price of the structure and passed on to the new buyer. Compared to a real estate cost of sale fee of 6%, a less than 2% increase in total costs of the structure from the old fees seems quite reasonable. And one developer is even offering up to $10,000 in upgrades if you will buy his home. That's way more than the impact fee proposed. The recommendations for these fees passed 5-0 by the Impact Fee Committee, which indicates the development community is recognizing our current deficit in infrastructure. Perhaps they do not like sitting in a half-mile traffic backup either. Lastly, I would encourage you to include some sort of inflation index on a yearly basis for these fees. A gradual increase rather than a huge increase at one time is much easier to budget for. I'm done. Thank you. Any questions?
Herbert, we appreciate your involvement and your communication. Thank you. The next person is Larry Olmsted, of which we also appreciate your involvement and your communication.
Okay. I'll be there soon. Maybe not.
You're fine, take your time.
Larry Olmsted, 838 West Dowling Woods Way, Nampa, Idaho, and I served on the Impact Fee Advisory Committee. Mayor and council, a lot of us have been walking around per our chests, pretty puffed out that Idaho's the fastest growing state in the union, and the Treasure Valley, the fastest growing state, fastest area growing in the state. You know what that means? That means nowhere else in the U.S. is development going on as fast as it is right here. And that's what tells me is you guys better get this right. You better get it right. I was going to go through the whole impact fee and capital improvement plan, but Ann covered that. The impact fees are not there to penalize developers or to try to stop them in any way. It's just a recognition that the cost of development, if it doesn't go to the developers, falls flat on the backs of the taxpayers that are already way overburdened in this city. The developers come up with two arguments against impact fees. One is that they stifle development. Academic studies have shown this isn't true. Taxes, cost of utilities, labor force, educational opportunities, quality of life, and recently you guys have seen that property tax exemptions are pretty good at getting industries in here. It does not stifle development. Boise, Meridian, Eagle have had fees similar to what we're proposing. You go drive through Meridian, Boise, or Eagle and tell me the development has been stifled there. The second thing is it's unfair to the developers. Hubert mentioned this. It's not. It's a one-time pass-through cost, just like building permits, tap-on fees, hook-on fees. Those fees go to the home buyer, and that's exactly where it ought to be. I commend you guys. I've sat through training sessions with you guys. I've talked to you. You are the most informed city council that has ever acted on this. I ask that you vote tonight to bring some fairness and equitability. Nampa has a history of subsidizing development. Those days need to end. We need to be fair to our taxpayers and pass these impact fees. Come on, Lisa.
Thanks.
Thank you, Larry. We appreciate your comments. Thank you. The next person is Ed Parnell. And Ed, thank you for being here.
I'll step forward. Ed Parnell, 505 Cool Creek, here in Nampa, Mayor, City Council. After those impassioned sermons, I think I'll just say amen and hallelujah. I've worked and admired their work and been involved and helped talk them down off the ledge at times when it got frustrating for them through the process. And I believe the time has come that it is appropriate. It still keeps us competitive, and avoiding the fees in this manner is just a form of deficit spending that's being forced forward on the current taxpayers and citizens. So with that, I'll try and keep it brief. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. David Peterson. David, I want to say thank you for the very different areas that you have served our community and are currently serving. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Madam Mayor, Councilman, Dave Peterson, 718 Whisperwood Court. I was pleased to see that there's corroboration behind the packet that you have here in front of you. That's really key. It's always fun when my builder friends and my city friends are smiling at each other, and that's a good thing. So just to say thank you for the foresight, for those of you on the council and those of you who helped get to this point, to understand that we need to continue to keep the fees abreast of the costs that are incurred and to put them in the right place. And I would echo one point that Hubert made, which was to keep your eye on these on an escalating basis, not a once every decade basis, because that's inappropriate. I also know that we try and do our best all the time. I do question the maze we created on 12th Avenue South is putting lots of people on residential streets. We should keep looking at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sharon Harris. And as you come, I'd also like to thank you for serving. Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Marcia. Where is Marcia Yaipan? She had to go home? Okay. So just so noted, she is in support of the impact fees. Larita, you're still here. Yes. And Larita, thank you for your service. My goodness. We have a lot of citizens that do amazing work, and you have done this, I don't know for how long, on the Bikes and Ped, and thank you.
Thank you. Larita Chandorf, 1108 South Stanford, here in Nampa. I am, along with all the others, definitely in favor of this. I think it's long overdue. I did want to add some comments that I would like to see. The fee structure minimize the impact for developers who strive to create affordable housing. We certainly don't want to discourage that, and so I did some reading in advance, and it I read in one place that Boise and Meridian have adjusted their fees if also a developer comes in and wants to develop in an area where the infrastructure is already in place. If they're developing within the city limits, if they're developing, if they're trying to create high density, which is something we're really striving for, that maybe we could give them a break on the impact fee, and that's just a thought I had. And of course, as chair of the Bike and Pedestrian Committee, and considering the discussion we just had, I would love to see just like 0.5% dedicated to sidewalks. So that's all.
Thank you. Glenn Moldenhauer, you're next. And thank you for being here this evening. We appreciate it.
Well, this is probably the first time for me to be here, Mayor and Councilman. It seems that I've been here pretty well all my life, and I don't know how many of you have been born and raised here in Nampa. And it seems that prior to all this growth in this valley, it seems that we were just kind of way behind in everything that we were doing, but that was kind of nice because I kind of liked that, to be able to deal with. Then all of a sudden, the impact started coming into Idaho here, and this started the problem, I think, that we all should probably deal with. But the thing is that I don't know for sure if the amount of influx is overcoming our growth with, stores and things like this, or dealing with the stuff to be able to lead these people to getting good jobs and things like that. And so I feel in my heart that we need to do something to be able to, you know, not have all these just townhouses and all the things that, you know, we're seeing here because of the fact that we don't have a lot of the businesses here in Nampa to be able to cover all the people that are working here or trying to work. And so to me, it feels like, you know, we need to get more of the stores coming in and things like that, because we've got more stores going out instead of coming back in to Nampa here. So I really appreciate the information that I was able to receive here tonight, because I wasn't aware of all this information that was here. And being a reserve officer for about 22 years here in Nampa, the Nampa Police Department definitely is in very need of all these officers, because this town is growing and we need to see more and more protection for the people here in Nampa. So I'm definitely in favor of this and would really like to, you know, be a part of this program and being able to deal with some of these things. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. So next on the agenda is, well, I guess, Ed, you were already on, and then Ron Harriman. Is Ron here? I don't see Ron, okay?
Yeah.
So let's see. Is it James? I'm not sure. Is it James Woolner? Thank you. James, come on up and give us your address, and I'll let you say your last name for me.
Oh, Bulmer,
Thank you.
116 Nectarine, Nampa, 83686. Now, I can't say I know a whole lot about all of this, but I know that people are upset because they don't want the fees increased. And I'm thinking that, okay, so if the new development doesn't pay for it, I'm paying for it, or it's coming out, part of it's coming out of my pocket. And it just seems like if we're trying to protect the developers so they don't get their profit cut in any way, shape, or form, it's coming out of my pocket. And in a sense, I should just give my money to the developers, because I don't think you have to know how to build rockets to know that they're taking money out of the city instead of paying it in the impact fees. And I could be wrong, but that's kind of how I see it, and I am all for it. So,
Thank you. Appreciate you coming this evening and sharing your opinion. Nathan Cleaver. Good evening and welcome.
965 West Mollywood, here in Nampa. Unfortunately, Larry's my neighbor, or I'm his neighbor.
That's a good clarification.
He just woke him up, by the way.
So, many of you I've met personally and know I'm a civil engineer and have designed several large shopping centers, a couple large shopping centers in the city. Treasure Valley Marketplace, when we were doing that was right before we first implemented the impact fees, where Treasure Valley Crossing across on the west side of Midland came right after. The comments I received from the developer at the time was, these fees are still low compared to what we pay across the Northwest. That was the comment, and that kind of stuck with me. And that was, I don't know, seems like 12 years ago. I think Michael, that was probably one of Michael's first tasks, I think, was the impact fees. Since then, I am over the Keller Associates Transportation Group company-wide. We have offices in Oregon, Washington, of course here in Idaho, our headquarters, and in Nevada. And I see communities like Nampa struggling to pay for their infrastructure. What I've had the opportunity to work with your staff. We stretch every dollar we can, or they do, for every project. We design roads for 20-year lifespan. What we see is that, well, what I see, my personal experience here in Nampa, is how do we get 5 more years out of this life? Do we really have to do a reconstruct? Can we do a rehabilitation on the roadway instead? Where when I worked for ACHD is, you're right, we could maybe get 10 years if we do a rehab, but we need to get the full 20-year life, let's do the full reconstruct. And so there's a different perspective because they have the money to stretch the entire way. So I am in support of the fees. Lastly, the cost of construction that we've seen is gone about 5% up since last year, 2017. That's based off all of our ITD numbers. My biggest concern with setting impact fees is that it's going to set for another 12 years or 13 years now. And the value of those impact fees are going to be diminished by 2, 3, 4, 5% every year. So how do we do this every year or not? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. In response to that, we did have that discussion within the Impact Fee Committee that we need to be reviewing them on a semi-regular basis as the economy changes, so we will be paying attention. Chip Kinsler, shall I just put you on the spot? I know that you noted neutral. Would you like to share anything? As a participant on the group, it would be nice to hear from you. So thank you.
Well, here's the problem, is that I was gonna build this house until impact fee studies started putting up the prices, then he backed out. No, my name's Chip Kinsler, 3260 Ginger Lane, Nampa, Idaho, 83686. And I'm not here to oppose or to promote impact fees. I'm here more to hopefully that they will get implemented in a fair way to the community. What I'm most concerned about is the people that are going to be moving into the communities that are already established in Nampa that I've been building in the last couple of years, where the impact fees have been $1,800. And what is going to be proposed right now is that if I built a house on lot A, the impact fees were $1,800. If I go to build a house on the next lot right next to it, come the passage of this, the impact fees will be $5,500. So what I'd like to see is that the subdivisions that are already exacted, that have, the developers have paid the fees up front already, those lots that are in those subdivisions are exempt from these new fees. Because at that point, you're kind of double paying on those lots, which I don't think is fair. And that comes more probably for me personally as a builder, and knowing that, you know, I want my clients to be, you know, treated fairly, you know, from the city. And I brought it up in one meeting that we had, and it didn't sound like that was something that could probably happen, but I hope that as a council you can think about that and, you know, consider that, you know, because I understand the state of our roads, and I understand that the roads in the city of Nampa need some help. And we're finally being able to, the city's finally being able to afford their part of it if they can get the grants every year that they say. And if they can't get those grants, then we're gonna have, you know, other issues, you know, down the road where it comes to collecting funds from new buyers and not being able to pay for it as a city. So that's something else to think about. You know, in the bigger picture than just impact fees are gonna fix everything, because they're not gonna fix everything. I think we all know that, but I just wanna come at it as a fair, you know, the way it's implemented to be fair to the subdivisions that have already been exacted. So.
Chip, thank you so much, and thank you for serving on the committee. I want to, at this point, and I don't have anyone signed up, and I'll ask in just a second if there's someone that intended to speak, but I want to say thank you to the group of people that have worked on this over a long period of time. You guys have done a really good job, and you've helped us walk through the process. It's been appreciated. The spirit of this meeting tonight is so different than it was the last time we approached this, and which is wonderful, because we have people that didn't always agree, but they respected one another and they respected their opinions. And it's been a really good process. So is there anyone else that had intended to speak that did not get on the agenda? Mr. David Ferdinand. Since you're not written down, I don't have your address, so I'll let you state it.
David Ferdinand, 2419 West Heron Loop. I came to listen tonight because I've been hearing these guys talking about it and explaining what was going on, and I just wanted to come and really hear the city council and hear your hearts and hear what you're doing. I think you've done a great job. I was taken back at how well I think you've done, not because you wouldn't do it, but because of the people that have given their impact or their input to make sure that the impact fees are, I think, balanced. That's tremendous. I work with developers and not only people that build houses and in that industry, it will certainly impact, as Chip was saying, it'll certainly impact some of those things that are currently ongoing. But I think the balance of what you've done to really take a hard look at what do we have to provide in order to provide the right services for our community. The one thing that I would suggest is, and I want to make sure that we help Beth Einig as well, and make sure that people know that there is a balance for those people that we're trying to bring in from economic development. Very important. I know when I was first on the Urban Renewal Board, that group had promised to put about $4 million in infrastructure in advance. That's an increment financed program, but if you're bringing water and sewer and utilities on the north side of Karcher, we know we're going to bring in industry that's going to increase that increment because it's increasing the value to our community. So I think that those types of things then help offset any increases that would have to be made in impact fees, because we're not taking a hard look at some of the other ways to fund those things. So that's the only suggestion I would make. Certainly not for any fees that increase taxes on our citizens, but certainly understand that it's necessary in order to provide the services that we need to, so that we can continue to grow as a community.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that had intended to testify this evening that did not get signed up? Okay. Seeing none, this is a little different because there is no applicant rebuttal at this time. Ann Westcott.
I'm not going to rebut it, obviously. Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Members of council, can I just respond to a couple of the
Please.
suggestions so that you know, in particular, the inflationary index. I've recommended in my report, as we do to all our clients, that you use McGraw-Hill or someone as your construction index, and that is, if not already in your ordinance, it's something that we work with council to do. The second part is affordable housing, economic development. That is the beauty of having the appeals process and the individualized assessment. That's already will be in your ordinance and already is in your ordinance, so that if you have a developer who is extraordinarily meeting community principles, you'll need to find the money. You can't just not pay for it. So you don't let them not have it, you just pay for them in that way. And so as long as the fee is held whole, you certainly, if you find that the fees are really providing a disincentive to particular community-wide benefits, that's what that individualized assessment is for, and I always am available to the administrator for this. Are those the only? I heard that point a lot. I just wanted to make sure you understood that those were in place. There's one other thing that I can't. Oh. Right, right, and yes, also going into your ordinance, and it's something we presented to you before, and you said you were supportive of that, is to have sort of a grace period for people who are already in the pipeline. It would not, I don't think it does not go as far as to deal, with CHIP's request, that if you already have, those parcels, that they're kind of grandfathered in, but it does give, I believe, 120 days. And if you meet the criteria of already being in the pipeline, you know, you have your, I think that kind of hits the, I have my financing, we've already gone through the process, that you have that, you have 120 days before those come into play. And that was, those parameters were given to us by the developers on the advisory committee and reviewed by staff. And Councilmember Hogaboom says, this is what?
Yeah. Can I ask a question of Ann? Thank you. You're very perceptive, and I'm still curious what my award will be for
sort of
answering the
look like
question earlier.
your face?
Yes, okay. But we'll talk about that later. On the advisory committee recommendations in our packet, on page 273, at least in our PDF packet. Yes, our packets are that large, for those of you wondering. Yeah, this is a small one, only 320 or 316 pages. So there is a point number 4. So not just a grace period, effective 120 days. Number 3. Number 2 is a little bit ambiguous. Negotiate applicable fees for developments approved but not yet constructed. Seems like a little specified. But number 4 says grandfathered developments which have already installed frontage improvements.
Right, so in that case, if CHIP had the entire thing already done, then yes, those would be in.
The frontage improvements being the exactions under the old system that is now going to be sort of sunsetting in this transition. So can you specify just clearly what would be grandfathered in? Because the word grandfather is included under number 4.
This gentleman
Okay.
will explain that.
Mayor, Councilman Hogaboom, the discussions that we had with the board, and I believe the recommendation of the advisory board, was that you would have the 120 days beyond the implementation date for the old impact fees within that. Not a full grandfather forever, but a transition period to allow that. That's my recollection of the motion by the board, the advisory board.
I guess this is the time to.
You'll look at that when we present the ordinance, the actual ordinance to you, if you don't have it.
Yeah, that's our follow-up meeting, correct? Where the ordinance will be presented. I guess there's just been some confusion on that. The grandfather is that because technically they met the old system, whereas in the new system, you're not asking them to do those frontages. And so I think the concern from some, which seems a legitimate concern, is that these people are hit twice. They would be the only people hit twice. Whereas in the new program, they're not asked to do the right-of-way, the full frontage. They would be paying the higher fees, at least on the street portion, to offset in the new system. And we would not be asking what was asked under the exactions under the old system. And there are those who have already satisfied the exactions under the old system that would also, beyond the 120 days, if I'm hearing you correctly, would also have to pay the newer fee. And they would be the only group that would be paying double.
And now I do have my
Yeah.
memo from October. Yeah, so the intent is that, there's 2 intentions. Is one, that someone who was in the process of having a development, had planned all their financing under this world, not be given a different world right in the middle. So letting those people enough time to get through the process. The developers told us that 120 days would be an appropriate amount. The second part is the amount of flexibility that the building department has in the negotiation part. So anyone who's trapped in that kind of place will come to the building department, and Patrick and I will make sure that if they've already been exacted everything, we're gonna look at what they've paid for and compare it to the CIP and credit them wherever the overlap is. Now, their exactions may not cover everything that's in the new streets fee, and so I have to kind of parse that out. But that, I think, was the intention, to extend to the development community that no, it has to be fair in the way that it's implemented. And obviously, I think these were for guidelines, but the intention was that we support the development community and not being blindsided in the middle of their process.
So will the ordinance have a formula that explains, because number 5 is to communicate the change in the fee structure. So you're talking about a credit that goes beyond the 120 days for the exactions? Because the grace period of 120 days would remain under the old fee structure, correct? And then you're talking about a credit, and the credit would be beyond the 120 days, where the building staff would be given either discretion to negotiate or a fee structure that's very clear for the development community.
The fee structure is very clear, will be very clear the night that you adopt it. The reason we are not having it be effective 30 days thereafter, which is what the statute allows, is so that even people who may not have noticed that we've been talking about this for 18 months, may not have seen the communications that the mayor's office has done, would not be surprised if they were already halfway through the process, went in to get their final permits, and yeah, you're still in the grace period, halfway through the pipeline, whatever you want to call it, you're through. Now, we may have some people who don't exactly meet these specifications. The way I work is that we work with those people individually to make sure we meet the intent of the law. And in your case, the intent is to fully recover the cost. If they've already paid that cost, that can be part of that development agreement. But you know, I stay in the gray probably more than you might like, but that would be our intention. That's how I've done it in the past. And I think that was the intention of the advisory committee, is to not blindside anyone. Now, we do always say, you know, if you're this close and haven't gone into permitting, get in now. We're not gonna wait 3 years on a lapsed permit and then have someone come back and want those. That's the difference. So if you are authentically, and these were the criteria that our development community said, these are the standards that we need to hit. That's how they wrote them. Certainly though, as we prepare the ordinance, we can continue to clarify that language if you would like.
Yeah, I just want, from the offset, something fair. And so the recommendations, as I read it, I just want clarity. So the new fee structure seems absolutely justifiable and fair based on the CIP. I don't dispute that at all. I guess the concern is the new developer who pays the higher fee, but they're not having to do the exactions. And then you have some subdivisions that aren't fully built out yet that have already satisfied those old requirements. And if they were to pay the new fee on top of that, there would be a disadvantage to the infill development of finishing build-out within subdivisions that have already satisfied the exaction.
That can't happen in any case,
Okay.
whether now or 2 years from now. Any developer who's had to put something in the ground for which the impact fee is trying to recover a cost, we cannot double dip. So in this kind
Gotcha.
of,
So you're assuring that at least the credit would satisfy that? Because I would rather not incentivize sprawl, if you understand my concern, where there would be a penalization on the build-out of subdivisions that have already done the exactions and not having the fee.
a bunch of ghost town subdivisions.
Yes, I don't want that. Okay, very good.
What we want to remember is that developers are asked to put in, are exacted part of the streetscape, and they also do things internal to their subdivision. What they do inside their subdivision has nothing to do with this. But where they have been asked and already constructed part of the infrastructure for which we would be asking future people to pay through an impact fee, they would be credited that amount.
Okay. Well, I'll look forward to the clarifying language, but my concern obviously was not to penalize build-out of existing subdivisions and to incentivize under the new system sprawl and then have subdivisions incomplete. That would not be economically wise. Okay, thank you.
Councilman Levi.
Thank you, Mayor. I just need something real simplistic to look at here. What is the date we're looking at that this starts? A developer comes in, we're not looking at the exact extractions, we're not looking at any of that, it's just this is what your fee is gonna be.
If you were to adopt the ordinance on February 4th, which is when it's scheduled, it would go into effect 120 days after that date.
Thank you.
And, you know, math's not my strong suit, but I think that's about 4 months. Good.
Okay, so this is a public hearing, and the public hearing is still open. Is there any further questions for Ann? Okay, so.
Chip.
So, can I say one thing? Or is it too late? Because there's a difference between developer
Correct.
Builders are the ones who come in and pay the impact fee for new construction of homes. That's what I think Rick is getting at. For instance, I'm building in Red Hawk right now.
Chip, come on up to the microphone.
Yeah, come on up, that way we can hear you.
Okay, so what I think Rick is talking about and I'm talking about is that the lots that are developed in Red Hawk subdivision right now, that's just a, for instance, because there's lots of subdivisions out there that are completely developed. The roads are in, everything's set. Those lots that are in there come, if this passes on February 2nd, those lots that are sitting there in that subdivision that's completely done are going to be charged the new fee, whereas right now we're paying the old fee, even though that subdivision is completely done. And I'm just saying, I don't think that's fair from a builder standpoint and from our organization standpoint.
Okay, thank you. So I think my recommendation is that we need to take that into consideration as we do the ordinance. And so this evening, the public hearing is still open, so I'd like to ask the council if someone would like to move to close the public hearing.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, this is a time for council discussion, and I would like to note that the ordinance will be written, correct? And we will have opportunity to take into consideration these comments, and we will come back and vote on the ordinance. And so this evening, actually, it would be, I would entertain a motion, and we can have discussion to approve, move forward with a recommendation to act on these impact fees and to instruct staff to go ahead and work on the ordinance. However, there will be another vote on the ordinance.
Madam Mayor, I'll make that motion as stated.
I'll second that.
Okay, in discussion.
Mayor Kling, having served on this Impact Fee Advisory Committee as well, not as a voting member, but obviously just as a liaison from this council, and being involved in the construction community, it was important to me that we weren't sending the wrong message to the development community. Our economic growth is the lifeblood of being able to fund some of these things that we're talking about. So it's important, I think, that we are cognizant of the concerns expressed by the development community and to listen carefully, because they're the ones that can choose to either build here or not build here or build elsewhere. So I also heard it mentioned by someone tonight how it would be really important of us as a council to seek to have business grow here so that people could live and work instead of live and drive to Boise to work or elsewhere. So when we look at these impact fees and the impact that it might or might not have on future business growth, whether it's commercial or industrial or retail, we need to have eyes wide open on the decisions we're making, because I think that's important to the message we're going to be sending to the development community, that again are using their precious dollars to either build or not build here. It's a choice.
Thank you for your comments. I have to say, I'm very business friendly, and we need to be mindful of the impact on business and local and small business. That said, when our impact fees do not exceed our neighboring communities and our impact fees have been at 50% of what they could have been, it's been a huge detriment to the citizens of this community. And I think our citizens have spoken loudly. It's what we've been listening to in our surveys. And that is that the growth's got to have to fund growth. And so I fully support our local business and our builders, our developers, and so we need to take all of that as we write the ordinance, take that into consideration. But if we continue to grow and we can't fund the infrastructure and the streets and provide the fire and the police and the needs for those that come in, then it's really going to hinder, ultimately it's going to hinder growth, because people are looking at quality of life, they're looking at traffic, and so I support this, and I feel like we've done a really good job, had great discussion, and we've had good dialogue around it. So I appreciate your comments, and I don't take them lightly. I don't dismiss them, but I think there's a side that it's time that we move forward with it.
And I would state, as far as a rebuttal to that, is I'm not trying to be contrary to this
Right.
process at all. I very much appreciate Chip and others that have served and continue to invest in our community. And I just, again, it's just a sensitivity that I have as an architect in the development side, watching what these guys go through, trying to help them steer through some of the difficulties that they are approached with. Boise, Ada County, I deal with them as well. And I'm more concerned about Ada County growth, but they seem to be taking care of themselves and not having a problem. So again, as long as our eyes are wide open, we are seeking to be consumer friendly, like you're talking about. I think that's the right message to send. And I really appreciate the spirit of what I've witnessed tonight.
Thank you for your comments. And I'm going to say an and to what you just said. The and is how it's being welcoming and providing good customer service to those people as they come in, too, which is going to be a focus of the city to make sure we do that. Is there any other council discussion?
Just, well, for the record, since this is the, public record, or public is closed, the public meeting part, but as I've contemplated the decision that we have to make, I try to quantify things for the analytical part of me. One option is to not build not build fire stations, not do the improvements, and that's not really an attractive option, and the public is not supporting that. The only other option is to bond. Once the bond expires, is to continue to keep asking our people to support bonds. As we know with the jail, there's a possibility that the public would not vote to support a bond, and we'd find ourselves a decade, 2 decades from now without fire stations and no ability to really fund it at that point. The other is to tax and save, take the 3% budget increases and appropriate all foregone without actually spending the money, but saving the money to have capital accumulation for big costs 5 years out, 10 years out, 15 years out. And even then, when I do the math, even if you were to save all 3% of our future increases and foregone, it wouldn't pay for the capital improvements that are put before us. So the option that's being presented to us is really a matching sort of option of impact fees plus budgetary commitments over the next 10 years to fund the capital improvement plan. Just to clear some misconceptions, because I got some emails saying, please support the impact fees because it'll lower our taxes. I just want to please speak to one misconception that might be in the public's purview, is that the impact fees are somehow going to reduce the taxes on the public. To be clear, this is a contract that we're making with the people to adopt this 10-year plan, assuming that the population growth increases at the estimations that are provided in the capital improvement plan. 26 officers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That funding has to come out of our budget over the next 10 years. So just to be clear, when we are contemplating budget, we have a legal requirement, from what I understand, to meet, or we have to return the impact fees if we don't meet, assuming the population growth, those budgetary commitments. So we are making a commitment, if we adopt the ordinance over the next 10 years, to do our part within the budget. And there will be some challenges within the budget, just to be clear, the next 10 years to try to fund that portion. Not just the 26 officers, but anything above and beyond. Police cars won't be funded in the impact fees. Those would be hard costs out of our budgetary operations that would be a challenge. But at least the impact fees get 26 police cars if we do 26 police hires. If we did not adopt this impact fee, there'd be no other way to pay for those 26 police cars other than our budgetary capacity, and it's very limited. We would be stifled in police and public safety and fire. So I support what's fair. I also don't want to see people double taxed or to incentivize sprawl under the new system where exactions have been made. So the concerns I voiced earlier, I'd look forward in the ordinance to understand better what the credits are, not on the fire, not on the police, not on the parks part, but just simply on the streets part, for the build out of existing subdivisions that have already satisfied the old system, just so that they're not double taxed and we give an advantage to the new development going outward. Those are, so I intend to support pending satisfactory explanation on what the credit is just on that one component. Thank you.
Okay, so we have had a motion to move forward and to instruct actually council and staff to work on the ordinance language. It's been seconded. I don't want to cut discussion off, but I think we're ready for roll call. Okay, call for the vote. Thank you.
Hogaboom,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Skog,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Brunner.
Yes.
Perfect. So we have a couple of other action items. Do people want to hop up and get to
sure they
leave
do.
right now? I'll pause so you guys can go, and then we'll quickly move through the next items on our agenda. Thank you to each of you for your willingness to be here. It's appreciated. Thank you. Okay, so 6.8 on the agenda is where we will pick up. This is an action item. This is a resolution and authorization for the mayor to sign the cooperative agreement for the FY15 D3 intersection improvements traffic signal equipment upgrade for the city of Nampa, and it's KN 13471. Tom, is that correct that it's FY15?
Yes, Mayor,
Okay.
that's an ITD fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
So move.
Oh, I have a
Second.
question. Okay. It's been moved and seconded, and we have an opportunity for discussion. And Councilwoman Levi, I think you have a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Tom, as I was reading through this agreement, it was stated that ITD will pay no more than their stated amount. So if this project were to come out any more, that comes out of our pocket? Am I looking on the right one?
Yes, the Councilwoman Levi, that is correct. That's a typical agreement that we have with ITD for this type of work. We look at the estimates and we feel confident about these, and if it did go over, we don't think it'd go over by much. It's pretty standard work.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other discussion or question on this item? Hearing none, roll call.
Rodriguez. Absent, I guess. Hogaboom,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Skog,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Brunner.
Yes.
And it was just clarified that actually Rodriguez was the second. He did the second on this motion. Is that correct? Was Rodriguez, did I?
Oh,
say
no,
that?
no. No, he
Oh,
did
he's
not
back.
second
Who's
this.
second? Randy did. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I misunderstood.
the time
you,
before
so it
he
was
did,
Randy.
though.
I'm sorry. Okay. Item 6.9 on the agenda. This is to authorize the mayor to sign an agreement for professional services with JUB Engineers for the engineering assistance as required by Federal Aviation Administration for the Nampa Airport Improvement Program, AIP 31, grant funding for taxiway and taxi lane construction at the Nampa Municipal Airport, and this has been reviewed and approved by legal counsel.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Hogaboom,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Skog,
Yes.
Brunner,
Yes.
Haverfield.
Yes.
Item 6.10 on the agenda is an action item to authorize the Public Works Director to sign a statement of agreement for the Idaho United Certification Program with ITD, and this has been reviewed and approved by legal counsel.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and this is an all-in-favor vote, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 6.11 on the agenda is an action item. This is a resolution to authorize the mayor to sign declaring the city's intent to reimburse the wastewater fund for the expenditures relating to the financing of Phase 2 upgrades at the wastewater treatment plant. And again, this document has been reviewed and approved by legal counsel.
So move.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Hogaboom,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Skog,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Brunner.
Yes.
I believe that ends our regular agenda. I will be looking for a motion to adjourn into executive session, and I'll read both of these. It's 7.1 and 7.2 on our agenda. It's a motion to adjourn into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 742061A to consider hiring a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent wherein the respective qualities of individuals are to be evaluated in order to fulfill a particular vacancy or need. This paragraph does not apply to filling a vacancy in an elective office or deliberations about staffing needs in general. 7.2 is a motion to adjourn into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 742061B to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent or public school student. And so as we look for a motion to adjourn into executive session, if you could include both.
So moved. Second.
Okay, roll call.
Brunner,
Yes.
Vogelboom,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Skog,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
So as we adjourned, just for those that are still here, we do not make decisions while we're in executive session. My guess is that you will be gone when we come back, and so thank you for coming this evening. It's appreciated.
Stick around.